distinguished members of this committee by singing Happy Birthday to Mrs. Melboy Benson. Ready? Happy birthday to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Will this be, where did Jay go? Okay, is it going to, so for the audience, the PowerPoint will be in front of you up on top, so that you don't have to try to see this one. Our NECAP scores were released about a month ago, and the individual reports were sent home to parents on each of their students. And right now I'm going to do a summary report for you. I just want to emphasize that the NECAP tests are just one assessment that we use to measure student progress. It's really important to keep in mind that there are multiple measures to consider when we're looking at student progress. And we do use different types of assessments. We use formative assessments, interim assessments, and summative assessments. And the NECAP is considered a summative assessment. The scores that you're going to see are based on the test administration from the fall of 2010. So 2011, excuse me. So just this past fall. The other thing to consider is I will point out to you that in some cases there are different cohorts of students, and in other cases we're following a cohort of students, meaning the same group of students from year to year. So I'll point that out to you. All of the school data has been distributed to the administrators, and at Administrative Council they have longitudinal studies of all of their data going back for as far as they had the grade levels. So the reconfigurations from a few years ago did play into the longitudinal data, but as we move forward, we will have nice data to collect for that. And also, there are some recognitions coming up on the next slide that the Department of Ed has summarized for us. They are important recognitions, and they are based on statistical significance. So though some schools around the state and some districts around the state have improved, they have not improved enough to meet the qualifications that I'm going to show you in the next slide. So here are our distinctions for North Kingstown. First of all, we are one of 8 Rhode Island school districts that demonstrated statistically significant gains in reading from 2010 to 2011. So reading scores were very high. We also demonstrated statistically significant gains in both reading and math for the last 5 years, from 2007 to 2011. And North Kingstown is 1 in 10 districts that demonstrated a positive, significant difference from the state average in writing at all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high. So it's something to be very proud of. Looking at our reading scores, you'll see a positive trend. North Kingstown is about 9th out of the public school districts. And this information is based on all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school. So it's a district report. And you'll see that we have trend upwards, and we are showing a proficiency of 86% proficiency. I apologize to the audience that you can't see the numbers, so I will make sure I say them aloud. And in our overall math, we are doing in our rating as far as our position with other school districts, public school districts. We are 8th in math. The scores are a little lower than the reading scores, but that is trending the same way throughout the state. So the math scores overall have been lower than the reading scores. But they are stable. We did not decrease at all, as the case that happened in many school districts. So we have a 71% proficiency in reading. In math. Reading was 86. This shows our writing scores. We have a 64% proficiency rate in elementary school. For middle school, we're at 77% proficiency, and at the high school, 60% proficiency. And let me just qualify that proficiency, the percent of proficiency, students that scored levels 3 and 4 on the kneecap. So now I'm just going to do a few slides that will show the trends because they're very interesting. First of all, once again, I'll reiterate that we had tremendous gains in reading. So if you look at this, this is what I'm showing the school committee is a 3-year trend. And we're looking at our current 6th graders. And we're looking back the last 2 years. So we have a 3-year trend. So when the 6th graders were in 4th grade, they had a 79% proficiency. In 5th grade, they went up to an 82% proficiency, and then as 6th graders, they went up to an 88% proficiency. So that is a real nice upward trend. This next one is our current 7th graders. So we have a reflection of from when they were in 5th grade. In 5th grade, they started off at 77%. They dipped just 1% the next year, it's 76%, and then shot up 10 percentage points, so they're up to 86. And that's our current 7th graders. This is a cohort then, the same group of students moving from 5th grade to 6th grade to 7th grade. And then for our 8th graders, we have, again, another jump. We start off when they were in 6th grade at 80%. They had a little dip to 78% the following year, and now they have also gone up 10% gains. So they are at 88% proficiency. Our high school reading is not a cohort that you can follow because the kneecap assessment is only done at 8th grade, so we don't have 9th grade and 10th grade scores. When we do the PARCC testing, we will have scores for those grade levels, but for the kneecap, we do not. And the PARCC testing will occur. The PARCC testing will occur in 2014. Am I still on? Can you hear me? And so for the high school that we're looking at students in 2009. The 11th graders scored at 85% for their reading proficiency, went up to 87%, and then went beyond the 90% rate of proficiency. So they are at 92% at the high school for reading. So that's outstanding. I'll show you a little bit of what's happening with the math trends. The math trends are not quite as consistent as the reading trends. We have here a 7th grade, and we have scores going from when they were 5th graders. So back in 2010, they were at 78%. Went down 4 percentage points the next year, and then have rebounded back up to just about where they were. They're at 77% proficiency. For the 8th graders, same kind of thing happened. 2 years ago, they were at 77%. They dipped down 4 percentage points and then have come back to almost the same thing, 76%. And then this just shows a trend going back 5 years. This is not cohort. This is different students going along each year. And I won't say all of these scores, but we started at 64% back in 2007, and we are now up to 77%. So we are looking at a 13% gain over the 5 years. So that's good for math. And then at the high school, we have more moderate progress than the slides that I just showed you, but still higher than other schools. We're only at 48% proficiency. However, that is 8th in the state for the math scores. As you probably are aware, RIDE has a mandate regarding diplomas, and diplomas will only, starting in 2014, diplomas will only be distributed to those students who show at least partial proficiency, which is a level 2 or above in both reading and math on the state testing. There are other ways to demonstrate proficiencies, and there are multiple attempts that are offered to the students moving forward. So this isn't the be-all and end-all. So we don't have to panic, and we are putting plans in place to address the issues. In fact, we've already started with the reading, and we have plans for the math. We're in discussion about that right now. So we have only 2% that have received a 1 in reading. We do have 20% in math. So those are a group of students that we are going to be focusing on to make sure that they can have the supports that they need. So we'll have some intensive strategies going on and interventions for them. And then the graduation rates have also been released. 88% of the North Kingstown High School's graduated in 4 years. The state average was 77%. And for those students that graduated in 5 years, that was 89%. And then 6 years, which is difficult to recover, moving that far out from 9th grade, we still have 93% rate of graduation, and that is 3rd in the state. Excuse me? This is North Kingstown High School. I'm sorry, what is it? Right. They have to track graduation rates right through past 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years, because we are responsible for the students. And that's it. So, anybody have any questions? Mrs. Benson?
This is not a question, but it's a personal observation of mine as a member of the school committee, and that is the dropping off between the reading in the, I will refer to it as junior high, 8th grade, as to when they enter high school, and how they come out in the 10th grade. And that's also a problem with the math. And when it was a little bit of questions as to counting the children within this number that were educationally challenged. Are they still taking that number within and giving us the scores? I read them in the paper, and I got something from the Department of Education, and that has been a problem with me as a member of the school committee. Just what is happening between that 8 and 10. I've done professional reading on why boys don't read, and I kept thinking maybe you were going to break it down in the set, because there are a lot of good educational sound reasons why boys don't read.
Right. Well, first, just to answer your first question, the scores that you saw were reflective of all school population. So that included the special ed students.
Okay. Well, I want to say that we are coming up, but we still have that little bit there that we need to reach for. And in talking with employment for our kids after we leave, I was at a conference, and one of the things that one of our leading employees gave to me, Dr. Bouquet, was the fact that they had no knowledge of reading. So I can see the importance of reading and the math because they were very disappointed at elected voters. And I'm sure you and Mr. Wells will understand this, being in that type of work, that things that puzzled him and kept them from hiring as many of our graduates that come in that they cannot read and distinguish, and they put a very simplicity between a 2x4 and a 4x8. And those are the things that they need. So this is bothering me as a former teacher and a member of the school committee, because everyone needs to read. And sometimes I think it is put to the act cards and this, that, and the other, because people think when they go for they can hear our
And the new Common Core standards that we will be implementing, that the whole nation basically is moving towards implementing, are based on career and college preparation. So you're going to see increased rigor as the years come upon us. So it would be challenged.
To jump in on this too, I agree with you about the difference between boys and girls, Mrs. Benson. But one thing it's worth noting again is that at the high school level, for the first time, we are above 90% proficiency for reading, and that's a great accomplishment. And to get to your point, what happens between 8th grade and 10th grade? Well, in the 9th grade is the biggest year for kids to leave public school systems and go to private school systems. A lot of parents decide that that's the year they're going to go to Henderson or LaSalle or Prout. So you're not necessarily dealing with the same kids. It would be interesting to see if they did the state test in the 9th grade to see, the 8th grade then right away in the 9th grade. But the state testing happens 8th grade and then you wait till 11th grade. And I think we forget that you're not necessarily looking at the same kids anymore. Some of those kids have gone a different path. So that's worth noting. And so I think it's worth understanding too that there's a relativity to a lot of this. That even though we have a very high score, or a much higher score in reading, for instance, throughout the district, we're 9th in the state in reading. And even though our score is about 2/3 of that score for math, that is equal to 8th in the state. So I don't want to say that the math people are doing a bad job, because relative to everybody else who's trying to do the same work, we're a little higher on the total pole. So I'm happy with the grades. We've got a lot of work to do, obviously, and I think that the work that is happening with the Common Core is more focused. It's a better articulated curriculum. I'm encouraged by it. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of this kind of converts once everyone is going to Common Core curriculum, which is starting down that road with everybody else. So it takes back to 2014.
That would be more than these. And you say that we're 8. It wouldn't be nice if we could say we were 3. But with all of those other
I'd like to say we're number 1. And that's what we're working on.
Yes. I would not overlook all of those circumstances, because there's a many things in a child's life before he comes to school, to the high school. There's a fear of the big building, leaving I would say, the mothering that you get in junior high school, because it's a run to this class, run to that class, and run to the other class. So I understand thoroughly that there are a lot of variables and unforeseen consequences in that. But I know that as a member responsible for the children's education, I wanted to voice that. And that is one of your strong points from where you came from. As the day that people so readily speak about you. And I know we can change it in the future if we work toward it.
Mr. Mudge? Thank you, Ms.
Right,
Benson.
let people know the order of hands that I see that Mr. Welch, then Mr. Rosgard, and then Mr. Mudge, and Mrs. Lovejoy, give the person to the honorable level. So, Mr. Welch.
A couple things I noticed. It's going to be a second year drop off across the board. Was that a change in the test?
Are you referring to the math where we had that dip?
It seemed like the second year there was a dip almost across the board.
Right. Well, I noticed it particularly in the math. I don't remember for the reading. And, sometimes it is the test, the areas of focus sometimes. With the writing, sometimes it's the prompt. So that's a good observation. But we did rebound, so that was a good news. Mm-hmm.
What do you propose that would change in order to get our math scores up? 48%, this doesn't seem like a good number to me, even if we are able.
Right. Well, the high school is already drilling down right now into the data to go more specifically so that they can identify the exact strands where students are missing things. Also with the kneecap, you have an item analysis. It's about 15 released items, and it gives you a breakdown. You can actually see not only how many students scored incorrectly on it, but what they chose as the incorrect answer. So then once you identify that, then you can look and see why are they coming up with that answer, and does it indicate a gap? Is it a misconception, and target it that way? So it's a gradual process, but you can gain a lot of information that way. We're also implementing some interventions. We have a response to intervention program that's developing and going very well through all three levels, where students' needs are identified, and then specialized interventions are implemented over a 6 to 8 week period, so they're monitored. All of the schools are using data much more extensively than they used to, so we're doing baseline data, interim data, and summative data to see how the kids are doing and adjusting our instruction according to that. So there are a lot of measures that the administrators and the teachers are taking at this point.
I don't know if the others are doing this. I certainly would be interested in seeing what one of these tests looks like. I think it give me at least a better understanding
Sure.
why the test scores maybe are the way they are. Maybe I would understand why we're only at 48%.
Right.
Very interesting. I want to take it. I just want to
Right.
I think it would help understanding what our students are going through.
Right. And also it's the test. The test covers some math material at the high school, in all fairness, that some students have not been exposed to in their program of studies. So, and that's not a whole lot we can do about that, but we are providing labs for students in math, opening it up to more students because they're finding at the high school that that's been very successful in helping students. You're welcome.
Mr. Rosgard.
When the spirit of taking tests, Mr. Rosen, teachers look at my paper with the same question. It did seem that between 2009, 10, and 11, that there was a drop.
Was that dip? Yep.
In some cases, it was statistically irrelevant, 1-2%. In some cases, it was more. And I was wondering if there was, what caused that trend, because it was pretty consistent throughout the thing.
Right.
You said there was a difference in grading the test or scoring the test. It was just the test itself.
Well, it might have been, and sometimes it's the focus. In certain areas, some of the test questions might be a little more predominant, and if it happens to be, for example, in geometry is usually a weaker area than algebra. Students generally tend to do poorer performance in geometry. So if the test had more items that were geometry-based, for example, and each test is different. I remember one year we really focused on something after analyzing and really worked the students in that area. And the next test that came up, there was a change of focus. And so, now we need to do that. So sometimes it is the test.
Sometimes I just want to add, it's amazing when you really look at this, how many factors go into one state test from year to year. I think the best data we could use is, after many years we saw trends, because year to year, one or two questions a little bit different could be a 3 or 4% dip or height, and nothing's changed with the students. It could be the weather. We have a lot of snow days in a given year, or a lot of disruptions, or there was a death of a student, and the whole school was affected by it, or it could be a million different things that affect a point or two here and there. I think the best thing to do is kind of look at that long term. You can see over 4 or 5 years that the arrows are going north. That's a good sign.
I'm glad to see that.
Yeah.
I think, John, as far as the math goes, I know I read a few years ago, before my daughter graduated, that beginning the year 2009 to 2015, and maybe it was even longer, there are going to be more children applying for colleges than ever before in our nation's history. And I think it behooves us to make sure that we're properly prepared for the math. Even though we're 8th in the state, and that's great in of itself, 48% compared to when they would go out and compete against kids across the nation for a seat at Boston College or URI or wherever they choose to go. That this could be a deal breaker.
One point in that regard, that comes up a lot, and it's kind of hard to tell exactly, where we are in relation to, say, the rest of the nation or other states, because there are different state tests. We are getting to the point with the Common Core that we will have the same state tests as Massachusetts, New York, and a lot of the other local states that don't currently have our state tests. So it'll be interesting to see how we're doing in that regard. But one good point that I think looks definitely favorably on Kingstown, and that is two things. One is we do very well on SATs, and that's a nationally normal kind of thing. And the other is the really great results we got this past year about our AP students, about how much we've improved in AP and improved the number of kids who are taking AP. That's an internationally benchmarked set of curriculum. So if we're doing well there, we can compete anywhere. The problem with those two numbers, of course, is that they only are select kids. It's not everybody. This is everybody. So it'll be interesting to see, how we're doing. Right now we can look at ourselves in relation to New Hampshire and Vermont. But it'll be much broader. It'll be about half the country that we're comparing ourselves to. The Common Core is one curriculum for about 46 states, but there are 2 tests. I don't know why there are 2, but about half the states take the PARC test, and the other states take something else. So we'll be comparing ourselves to about half the country when we take that next test.
I agree with you. It's important that kids choose not to go to college or explore vocation, that they have to have a foundation. It's without years by now. It's a lot more anecdotal stories that we had at like a club with
All right, thank you. Mr. Mudge.
Yeah, they're saying, getting the kid working with you.
Thank you. A couple of observations. First, a general one. This issue with grades is so perplexed and confusing. It's just incredible. And, I think as a nation we failed. Dr. Unger just said, we may be testing with Massachusetts and this school and that school. If I go to California and I'm not feeling good and I go to the hospital, 98.6 is kind of something that's a standard that says, maybe you're not feeling, you're feeling good, or it's, so forth and so on. But to have so many different metrics and so many different tests is just really disingenuous to everyone, I believe, in the school systems. And I think that It's hard to say because one of my comments was going to be, well, how did we do nationally? You know, how did we do with Mississippi? How did we do with Alabama, some of those places? And I think this leave no child behind stuff is going to have a profound effect when it changes again, because simply it didn't have every state take the same test, number one, so you could see what's really happening here. And I think we'll be talking about this problem until the cows come out and jump over the moon, until we can get a national type of a system where everyone takes the kids like the College Board exams and so forth. It takes several years, to make it happen right. But I got to believe there's a lot of people in this country that don't want to take tests with people, standing people all over the country, myself, because they don't want to say, we didn't put the amount of money in education they did in Rhode Island or Massachusetts or someplace else. And with the Leave No Child Behind, I think that's going to be an issue now that's going to change things. And it was a failure.
And to that particular point, right now the Rhode Island has submitted an application for flexibility or waiver, actually, for the ESEA, along with several other states. About 11 of them have been approved already.
It is, and it still even goes beyond that because just the way they put in some of the folks that the special ed kids and this they throw them into the hopper. For example, I noticed the charter schools did very good. The two that I think we should be paying, not sending our kids to and paying, they did very well. Okay, this year, I followed them, but in 2007, 2008, they weren't doing any better than North Kingstown. They're doing a little bit better, but you look into those metrics and you'll probably find that they don't have the same student body that we have. They probably don't have 22% of the kids that are on special ed and all those other things. So, all these statistics, are going to just drive you crazy in the end. But I know we have to keep working on that and functioning on that. But one thing I did notice, in our district, over the last 5 or 6 years, we've probably had at least, 8 years anyway, we've probably had 5 or 6 different school configurations. First of all, we had the kindergarten that they dumped back in, 2003, and then we spread that out. Then we closed that school down, and a couple of years now, then we opened up a closed Wickford Elementary School, and then we reorganized. That has to have some bearing on all this stuff eventually.
I think you're correct with that. And looking forward, hopefully we'll be stabled out. And it affects a lot of things, that type of disruption. And, it's school climate, it's articulation between grades, et cetera.
Quinessa was probably one of the best kindergartens in our district. They probably still are. But they have a different subset of type of a population.
One interesting point in that regard is that, and this is not only North Kingstown, but in the state, right now North Kingstown really went up significantly at the middle level, that 6, 7, and 8 group, and that's not just testimony to really good middle schools. That's a testimony to all very good elementary schools, preparing them for the middle schools as well. We saw that those results didn't come out right now, but the last results that came out in science, Davisville Middle School was second in the state in science, and Wickford was 5th. Those are remarkable scores. And so, we're doing a lot of things right, and it's paying off, and I think that as long as we just kind of keep those lines going northward, it's a good sign,
I think the investment that we made actually 2 years ago in going to the K through 5 configuration. Well, it's a little more expensive, and that's fine as far as I'm concerned, but those are the type of things I think you'll see improve your grades over a period of time. The kids are in the same school, the parents, we're not running all over the place. So there's just so many factors in this thing that we haven't got it right in the last 50 years, and I hope it's not going to take as much to do that. Finally, let me just say a comment about, taking your test, because everything changes all the time, from one year to the next year. I talked to my granddaughter who's at college, and her and a couple of the students went in, gave the professor hell, okay? They're giving up tests on things that they even have in the paper. And they wound up having the whole, test, regraded because of that. So, like Dr. Ogier was saying, or you were saying is, you know what's going to happen. You're trying to follow what's going to, we think is going to be requested in this level of testing for the schools, but they come out with something else in the test. Well, you're always going to face that too. So, there's so many anomalies. It's just so difficult to...
Right. But that's why it's really important that your assessments in the district are aligned with your curriculum, and the curriculum is following the standards. So I think we're doing all of the right things, as Dr. Auger said.
We hope that the tests follow the curriculum we're supposed to teach, too.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. So the taught curriculum matches the written curriculum.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You're still in the hot seat here, Dr. Humbert.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Avanzato. Then Mrs. Held, I'll have you next. Oh, you don't have any questions? Okay.
Just going to go very quickly because we've got a lot on our agenda. Thank you for the presentation, and congratulations in the areas that we increased. I think that, we're relatively new, as are a lot of districts, to the endeavor of using the data to try to figure out where the weaknesses were. Mm-hmm. And that really just started in earnest just a couple of years ago. And so, or even maybe just last year, that we really started putting a lot of resources towards that. So I think that we'll see the fruits of that relatively soon, especially curriculum alignment, which I know we've been working really hard on, beginning with Dr. Thornton and now going forward. The middle school increases are really important. It's just a very important time, I think, in the time of a student. It's when things really, the heat gets turned up and before high school, and then they need to perform in high school. So I think that's a good sign as well. That's all.
Thank you.
All right.
Mrs. Page, could I make one last comment?
I have a couple things I want to ask, but go ahead.
Okay. I just want to point out that, a couple of years ago, this is even before, I arrived here, I know Dr. Thornton was making an effort to increase the number of reading specialists at various levels. We did a number of reading specialists at the middle level and at the elementary and at the high school level. Well, wouldn't you know, a few years later, we're over 90% at the high school in reading for the first time. And all of the district has gone impressively in the right direction in reading. So, those moves that we make at budget time and adding and subtracting and all that sort of thing, they really do make a difference. And I think it's just worth noting right now that, we're seeing the fruits of some of those decisions that were made in the past few years. So.
Well, I'll add on to that on a personal note. I saw it the last 2 years at the high school. There were certain classes that my son took, and I did see an improvement in his grades in the reading proficiency and the math proficiency. So, like I said, on a personal note, it was very good to be able to see that those interventions did some good in raising his scores. Three questions that I have is that I just want to make sure I have clarification. When they grade the 8th grade for proficiency in writing, that is different than the proficiency for an 11th grader in writing. Am I correct?
How do you mean different?
What they're expecting to see for an 8th grade writing would be different than what they're expecting to see for an 11th grade writing.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so because I noticed that we were real high in our 8th grade writing, but we weren't as high as in our 11th, and I thought, well, I would imagine there is a difference in what you're expecting to see from the 8th graders as to what we're expecting to see from an 11th grader.
Yes, absolutely.
With the NECAP scores that are going to be on the 2012 for determining if the students receive a Regents diploma, is that going to be just reading and math, or is it, and it's not going to include writing and science, correct?
That's correct.
And
that would be 2014.
Okay, what year did I say?
It's a graduating class of 2014, so current 10th graders.
How are we going to do that as a state if in 2014 we're using PARC, but right now we're gearing our curriculum to the NECAP, but yet in 2014, the PARC comes in, and at the same time, before we have any metric, it's going to be going on the diplomas to determine if you get a Regents diploma.
Right.
Well, that group will be taking the test in 2013, but their follow-up test, it'll be interesting because they'll be converting to PARC at that point if they have a second chance. So it's a very good question. We're waiting for that guidance as well.
And we are doing major curriculum work in both ELA and math right now to the Common Core. So that professional development and writing of the scope and sequence and writing of the units for math, that's all happening this year and will continue next year. And we're about to embark on the ELA writing, and that's going to start actually the end of April. So we'll be ready. We'll be as ready as everybody else.
So when you're saying the Common Core, basically that's what the PARCC test is about. So we'll be ready for the PARCC test when we implement it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
One more question.
Yes, Mrs. Benson.
One question for you. I can't pronounce her name, but the author, she's from the state of New York. You know Dr. O.J. The professional book I read was when you were in the curriculum office and you were getting professional literature. And I have noticed in all educational reports that's coming, they want to do away entirely with the testing.
With what?
With the testing. She has changed courses. The one who is the author and originator of the test. Do you know, can you recall her name, Dr. O'Day?
Yes, thank you. Diane Ravitch.
Yes, that's it. Now they're working
Thank
to
you,
do...
Mrs. Santa.
Say what?
That was Mrs. Santa who came up with that.
Thank you, Rachel. And she's working now to do away entirely with the testing. Entirely. And when I heard Dr. O'Jay say that we are coupled up with Massachusetts, Vermont, and so forth, and talking with our students and with the parents, we have a large number of students from North Kingstown that are able to go out of town now to college. They are going from Pennsylvania back. And that could be one thing, because we have quite a few children in the colleges in Virginia, quite a number in the colleges in Virginia, and we have some students that's doing excellent. And I'd like to say this for the last thing. None of us have anything not to be proud of, because we have come up, you know, and it seems as though we keep pushing, but that's right. We want to get to the point where it's good, better, or best. Never let it rest until good is better and better is best. And I will take this time to congratulate you for your short time in giving such in-depth report on the test.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Hubbard.
you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have citizens' comments. This is a business meeting tonight, so anyone who has signed up, we don't have anybody who's signed up, so anyone who would like to speak at this point may come up to the mic. We will not be taking citizens' comments before a vote because it is a business meeting, so now is your time to let us know your thoughts. I welcome any of the scouts who want to come up here. I know you're here for either your communications or citizens, or is it communications? Okay.
Is that actually some kind of a punishment that you're going through tonight, guys? Resilience badge or something.
Very educational.
All right. Well, seeing that no one has come up to the mic, we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Well, thank you. You know, I just have one thing I want to point out tonight. I'd like to send my congratulations and my thanks to Mr. Ned Draper. Mr. Draper has recently taken another job, and he will be moving on in approximately a month. He'll still be available to us kind of on a part-time basis in the interim, but he has been such a support to me in my first few months as superintendent, but also to the last few superintendents and to this committee. And there's no one who is more professional and who is just more of a gentleman than Ned Draper. And I just want to say I really appreciate it.
and thank you for your service to this district, Ned.
Thank you, sir.
May I?
Just
I
wait,
would be
just wait.
That's all I have
All
for
right.
right now.
We're going to start into routine items, and the first item is correspondence. Does anyone have anything for correspondence? Mrs. Benson, did you want to say something?
His resignation is on the agenda, and I will save it until that time.
Well, this would be a good time if you wanted to say anything.
Well, I just want to say that first, I must congratulate Mr. Draper at your young age going and continuing in your career path. And I must say that Rhode Island School of Design's gain is our loss, because I don't know another person who has worked in this school department that has been more misunderstood than Mr. Draper. He is what I call, and I've said it a lot of times, he's the one that got all the lashing when it wasn't due you, and I know that. And it's the old adage is, the longer you're gone, the more you'll be missed. But I'm very proud that you're continuing in your career path, and you will sadly be missed. The only thing I have to say is that we have someone on the agenda to fill your job, and I don't think you could have done your job if you go by this one. So I'll leave it at that as a word of thought for the qualifications of the person that's coming, that we are going to be seeking to replace you, but you're unreplaceable.
Any other correspondence?
Yes.
Mr. Mudge.
I have a few budget items and a couple of emails. These three are relative to the past, the fund balances and so forth. And the reason I'm bringing these up,
Mudge, I'm sitting next to you, can't hear you.
and the reason I am bringing these up is because we have a consistent, unfortunate issue, faulting the town council with not funding our budgets. And I believe we have to get away from that. And when you look at the facts, you'll see that we've had more than adequate funding over the last several years. I'll just go back to fiscal year 8 audit. We had $500,000 surplus at the end of the year. 09, $1.6 million. 010, $2 million. And this year, about $900,000. And the reason I'm saying that is these are documented, not my numbers, audited, okay, surpluses, in addition to, other things.
Point of order.
Excuse me?
Yes, what is your point of order?
My question is these points, while maybe valid, should be made during the budget section of the meeting? Is this correspondence?
I was going to, but the last one, it wasn't.
Okay, I didn't know if it was
didn't
correspondence or
happen. So I'm going to submit it for the record, and I have got copies for other folks here. Pass that down, please. I have another one, basically. I'm going to update these when I get the new budgets here. This is basically, which is kind of bugs me, is on our various programs and the programs and how they changed this year from the last several years. Now, I'm going to update that because I have a lot of questions on that. The last one is I got from Mr. McGuinn today, and he's looking for some help from the superintendent to solve some problems here with something. I'm going to pass that in too. Some help. And finally, I have one that I sent to, and I think I did send it to the school committee subsequently, to our lawyers and the lawyers for the school, the ESP people, trying to get information to get acquainted with the background of the negotiation process that went on. Okay, and I'm convinced I don't understand why we're not at the table, to be honest. And what my intent was to gather the data together to understand where we stood. And it's exemplified by the fact that we did get an email, or it's in the, I think it's last week's or this week's correspondence from the school committee's, the ESP union's lawyer, which said, that we were willing to give up privatization.
Mr. Mudge, it
And
would be
what
appropriate
happened?
for you to submit but let's not go into what the lawyer has sent us at this point. So you may submit your
It's not
correspondence,
private.
and that is fine.
It's not, private, and I'm looking forward to, and I'd like to convene a meeting with the members of the negotiating team and to arrange for a meeting with the union folks.
I think we'll be talking
Thank
about that
you.
later on in our agenda.
Okay, so I'd like to pass that in, please.
All right, any other correspondence? Okay, I have, yes, Mrs.
received
Benson.
some correspondence, but I took it to be a congratulatory correspondence. And thank you, Mr. West, for the answer you sent to Mrs. Her last name ends in K, but her first name is down in Saunderstown, Jenna. Thank you very much for such glowing compliment.
Okay. You're welcome.
All right, I will point out that it is after 8 o'clock, so that means that our boys' basketball team has had their tip-off up in West Warwick against Cumberland. So we wish them the best of luck tonight, because they had a bye, but it is now the sort of thing of they have to win the rest of their games to go on. I also wanted to say that congratulations to both our boys and girls swim teams, which came in second in the state, and specifically to congratulate Boris. Okay, Steve, Mr. Chevalier, you're going to have to help me with Boris's last name. Okay, you don't know either. Okay, so I'm sorry, Boris. I will massacre your name, Boris Paralatissi. Okay, who came in first in the state in the 100 freestyle. So congratulations to Boris.
Yeah, I also wanted to add, I neglected to congratulate the mock trial team who won their last trial, and I wanted to recognize our own school committee representative who was on that team, Mr. Chevalier, and good luck Friday at the next trial. It's really interesting, and anyone can go to those mock trial sessions, and they're really, really great to watch the students as attorneys. It's a lot of fun. They're open to the public if you'd like to find out. I will provide that information for the committee. It's next Friday. Steve, do you have the information on it? When and where?
Yeah, it's next Friday around 12 o'clock at, I believe the courthouse is down near Brown University. Not sure the name of it.
All right, I'll get that courthouse and I'll pass it on to the committee because it's fun to go watch them.
Okay. Thank you. Great. Thank you. All right.
Mrs. Page.
Yes, Mr. Welch.
Having served on this committee for about 3.5 years, I thought I understood what correspondence meant. And I would like a definition of correspondence in the policy manual, because what I hear often at this table is not correspondence. And I think it needs to be a definition that we all can understand and appreciate, so that correspondence comes, it's addressed to this committee or to a committee member. It is not something that we want to talk about out of order. And I would appreciate it if the policy committee would take that up. Thank you very much.
All right, that is duly noted.
I check Robert's Rules of Order as a start.
All right, so we are now on to executive session.
In correspondence.
Mrs. Berglund, if you could, do you have any votes? Yeah, we have votes to reveal.
The one
Yes.
vote. You're going to seal the minutes first? Get a motion to seal?
Yes, do I have a motion to seal the executive session minutes from?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Which executive committee meetings are these?
Today's.
Mrs. Berlin, would you know that I didn't vote because I wasn't in attendance at executive session?
And is that the same for you too, Mr. Mudge?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Would you note
Like
that
to
in
read
the
it.
minutes?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And for disclosure of votes, all members were present at tonight's executive session except Bill Mudge, Mel Benson, and Larry Cerisi. One motion was made by Dick Welsh, seconded by Linda Avanzato, to adjourn executive session and go into open. Motion passed 4-0. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Before we go on to the consent agenda, Dr. Auger has asked me to go back to his superintendent's report. There was one thing that he wanted to bring up.
I apologize. Based on a question from Mr. Cerisi last time, I asked Mrs. Santa to come tonight to talk a little bit about some of the plans that we have for the use of Davisville Elementary School. I'm going to go into a lot more detail about the entire plan next time. But since she is here this evening, I wouldn't mind if she could come up for a few minutes and just talk about the transition program that we have scheduled to move there. It is something that has been approved within the budget that we submitted to save $100,000 in district spending, and I'd like her to talk a little bit about that. And next time when I give a full presentation on the school, I'll go into some details about the actual numbers and how they play out, that sort of thing. Rachel, if you would. I think you've got to turn that on.
Hello. We utilize the word transition a lot. So in this particular case, when we're talking about transition program, we're talking about our students that are under special education or under the IDA regulations that still require services beyond their high school diploma. So these are students that typically have earned all their credits towards a diploma or earned their credits towards a work readiness certification, which is language you're going to start hearing about for our students who are on alternate assessments. Those students who still require transition services and working in employment, education, and independent living. We're required by federal mandate to provide services, and it's determined by the team. I tracked over the since 2008, we've spent approximately $120,000 a year to have other agencies provide these services. And at that time, it was pretty cost-effective because I had not very many students, and they were kind of all over the place in many different programs. When I took a look at it, though, I knew that coming up, when I look at the cohorts of kids coming up, I knew that we're having more and more students moving up that would more than likely require these level services. So I started putting in motion about 2009 to have our own transition program within the district instead of having to send our kids to the Independence Transition Academy and all the other places that we were sending our kids, including perspectives, which is, I think, sometimes in your budget, it's not all perspectives. Let me be clear on that we're paying tuitions to other programs, as well as providing hourly charges from perspectives to provide job coaching and in the community supports. So it was a cost-effective when you only had a few kids, and I know $120,000 doesn't sound cost-effective, but with the numbers, I couldn't have provided a program for less. It would have been actually more. But over time, it's sort of like a chess game. I've put pieces together so that this coming school year, that we would not only have, we'd have a teacher and we'd have at least one job coach and probably actually two job coaches available coming from the current budget, coming from the current set of staff members in order to create this transition program. So again, like 18-plus students, 18 years old and up, who are still working on their transition skills in those three areas I talked about before. It's very cost-effective for this coming year because I'm able to take the staff from what we currently have, as well as save the money that we're paying out, save a little bit in reserve. The $20,000 I'm kind of thinking as in reserve in order to continue if I need to have some services around finding job placements in the community, which is the most time-consuming and difficult part of that particular program. We would have that money in which to do it, but we would save overall that from this current budget, which is great for this coming year, but it's even better for the year following. That's when our largest cohort that we currently have beyond our current sixth grade cohort as well as our preschool cohort is our largest cohort coming up that will require these services. And I would anticipate it would be a minimum savings of what we would have, not out of the current budget, but what we would have outlaid in that particular year, an additional $100,000 in services. So over this year, it'd be $100,000. The following year, probably close to $200,000, maybe even $250,000 in savings by creating this program. I'm working together with members of the business community. Our next meeting, a member of Chamber of Commerce is coming, as well as our middle school and high school teachers, social worker, speech, and OT therapists, who are all working together as a group. We've developed a vision statement for the program, and now we're working on what the curriculum will be underneath those three very specific areas of employment, education, and independent living. So that's the, yep. Looking at
Mr. Welch and then Mr. Mudge.
Sorry.
Hi, Rachel.
Yes.
Thank you for that information. How long would a typical transition last?
Again, it depends on the student. It's a very independent decision, but typically we're talking about up to the age of 21, we're providing services for students.
So you're talking from 18 to 21?
Correct.
Okay. And what's the chances that there would be other districts that might be willing to join in with us?
I mean, purchase services from us or do it as a joint? I think purchase services is a realistic, although I would caution not to do it this year and to take a look at how large of a group we have coming up the next year. So I take a look at that. I will say there is interest from other districts. I will also tell you that I did attempt to create, to do a joint project with another district, and I attempted 3 different times to work with that other district to kind of create this together, and it just didn't fly for whatever reason. So at that point, I can't beat the dead horse. I had to move on and develop what we need for our students. So yeah, I do believe, I think from the very beginning, since I've come here in 2008, I have worked really hard to make sure. I was always worried that we may consolidate, which is not necessarily, we may consolidate for other districts over time, and I want to make sure that if that were to happen, that North Kingstown would have everything we needed for our students, and therefore they would come to us and not us having necessarily to go to them. So from 2008 on, that the development of programs, our alternative learning programs that we now have at all levels, we have our life skills programs, we now have this particular transition program, which is sort of the continuum, that particular group of students. That's the whole point. So that is a potential. I can't guarantee it, and I would be very cautious in the first and second year.
Thank you.
Mr. Mudge.
Yes, I was interested in the number of kids from roughly from 18 to
21
that you have. And
how many do we have?
Yeah, that you're in that program, like the last 4 or 5 years, and what you project for the next 3 or 4 years.
I don't have those numbers in front of me, so
don't tell
so I can give you some round numbers. I can tell you that we've had approximately 6 students a year. This is a really good year to start this program for next school year, because by aging out, in other words, kids are turning 21, I have several students who have come out of or will be finishing or have finished some of those more expensive programs, which are typically around $30,000 to $40,000 a year, just to give you an idea. And the other students were done by kind of like an hourly pay. So we probably had an average of 5 to 6 students over the last few years. This coming school year, right now, we are slated to have, I believe, 5 students in that to start off with that program. It may be 4. We're still on the fence with 1 as to what that student's program is going to be. Keep in mind, independent programs, individual programs kind of change as things occur for that particular student.
Well, supposedly then, from a budgeting standpoint, you lose 1 a year, or maybe 2, and you bring in 1 or 2 a year. So really, you have a bit.
Correct.
I like to look at what that baseline is.
Yeah, I'm anticipating. Anticipating, barring lots of different types of variables and circumstances, that in school year 2013, so not 2012 coming up, but September 2013, I'm most likely going to have about 12 to 14 students that require this level of service. So you can, again, see, when you start foretelling and thinking about cohorts of kids, we wanted to prepare now. And being able to start with only 4 to 5 is great, because that's able to kind of pilot that program, get it going before we really hit with a lot more students that we need to provide service for.
What's the criteria that is established for these children? I mean, does the state have to approve this, or?
No, it has to be determined by individual education program teams, so the evaluation team decides. Typically, if a student has significant needs and disabilities, they qualify for transition services. All students receive transition services from the age 14 up, but some require much more in-depth around, these are students that may, in the future in their adult lives, be in supportive employment. They may be students that always need job coaches their entire lives, that they're not capable of being independent. And we are required by federal mandate to provide these services. We're fairly judicious. We take a look at the student. If they are graduating, have some needs, but they've had a job, that's not typically a student that's going to be in transition services.
I'm surprised the state hasn't done anything to kind of
Well, the state will tell you that they have, that about 8 years ago, they provided money to provide transition academies. They originally slated to do 4, one in each area, southern, northern, eastern, western. They only actually ended up funding 2. So, and funding means that they help to get it going, but the districts that send their kids there still have to pay. So, depends on what you look at.
Mrs. Benson and then Mrs. Avanzato.
I would like to say congratulations to you for doing this, and that is a wise educational decision you made to not to seek the outsiders the first year, because that has been something in the that's with the special education law that I've known for a while, that we own them until we get 21. That's federal law. And if they're 21 before the end of the school year, we still own them. And thank you so much, because this is much needed. And sometimes when we talk about bringing other people in, you will be able to evaluate that after the first year.
Right.
But that was a excellent educational decision that you made on this for this time.
I do think it's a good potential. When I said I was disappointed I was able to develop this partnership with another district, ultimately, though, I think it's in the best interest of North Kingstown that didn't occur, because our students would have job placements within our community, within our businesses, so our community would support and would get to know the students. And I think when we have that, the students are much more successful. When I have a student placed in Warwick and they're having jobs in Warwick, but they live here, what's the potential that when they turn 21, they're actually going to continue that job in Warwick? It's probably minimal. But if they stay here, they're from here, they stay here, they get a job here, they're more than likely to become active members of our community and participating, paying taxes, things like that, and giving back. So.
May I give you a lead on a company that's very, very, I've noticed, that's Janco Enterprise.
Okay.
And you said that about Warwick, but there's a little boy that comes there every day from Warwick that's in a program like this. So this, to me, is really an educational giant. And thank you, Dr. O.J., for going along with this, because I just think it's wonderful, and your decision for the first year is excellent, and it is good educational-wise.
Thank you.
Mrs. Avanzato.
Yes, just very quickly, because I know we're going to have more discussion about this at a future time, but I just wanted to thank you. And this is basically what this committee asked and what you said you wanted to do, which was provide more of these services in our own district and really save money that way, and also bring our kids back into our district, which I think are just all very good.
And we're down. When I started in 2008, we had, I believe, about, again, I don't want to be exactly quoting the numbers, but I believe we had about 68 students in our district placements. We currently have 41. And a lot of those students are out of our control because they're part of DCYF system. So we've done a very good job. That's the work of all the teams in this district, working really hard to make programs work. It's the principals. It's everybody that makes this work. as far as the LPs and things like that, and has saved a significant amount of money. And I also wanted to, not to correct Mr. Mudge, however, I wanted to let him know that our percentage of special ed in district is around 11%, not 22%.
I was thinking of the funding.
Oh, funding, yes.
Funding.
So, but actual numbers is about 11%.
The federal government will make sure you get the funding.
I'm afraid they don't, Mrs. Benson. But the budget's
don't
around
be
20%, 21%.
That's probably
Don't
true.
be
Is there any
afraid.
more questions for Mrs. Santa?
Because the feds will make sure you get
All right.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you,
My
Rachel.
pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to the consent agenda. Are there items to exempt from the consent agenda?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Item C, 1 and 2. D1. 4.
What was the last one? 4?
4.
4, is that E4?
Yep.
Okay.
7. D7. And that's it.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would like
Oh, go ahead, Mr.
E2 and 3. I have questions on those.
Mrs. Avendato.
I need to exempt C1 and, I'm sorry, C2 and 3, because I was not present at that meeting, and I would like to exempt E8A.
Yes, Mr. Welch.
I'd like to make a motion to approve any remaining items on the consent agenda.
Second?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion passes.
May I
Mr.
make a
Mudge.
statement about the consent agenda?
What do you want to do?
Make a statement.
Can you make a statement when we take each one of the items? That would,
Not on each one of those items. It's bringing out a point that Mr.
no,
Welch...
I'm going to say no. I'm going to ask for...
bringing out, it's very pertinent to the consent agenda. It's bringing out a point that Mr. Welch made concerning the correspondence.
No, at this point, we're going on to the consent agenda. Mr. Mudge, you had exempted
Thank you.
C1.
That was a very statement you made about the...
Mr. Mudge, C1.
Yes.
Let me say this the first time. I'll take a motion to approve the item or not to approve the item, and then we'll have it for discussion, okay? So that'll be the procedure that we have here for each one of these, just so we have a way to get through them and that we don't take forever. So we're talking about C1. Do I have a motion? Mrs. Avendato.
Motion to approve C1?
Do I have a second? I'll second it.
Second.
Okay. All right, so now discussion. Mr. Mudge.
Yes. As part of that is a letter from Mr. Draper who's in correspondence, and that's indicating that something happened, okay? And there's more like a question, and I don't know what the relevance was. If you noticed on page packet 12, A14, he's referring to some action that refers back to the minutes of the meeting here about the approval of a maintenance and reorganizational plan or something to that extent. So I'm not sure what the relevance of that is. And I'd like to understand why that was referenced.
I don't think anybody's going to be able to answer you right now, but what you've stated is noted.
That was the June 14th and the June, believe it or not, the June 14th and June 28th school committee meetings.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, is there a motion? Let's go for all those in favor of approving the minutes from February 7th, 2012, say aye.
Whoa, I'm not finished yet. That's
right.
just one.
What else did you want to discuss about the minutes?
Yes, I'd like to understand, okay, in the minutes of the 12th, the 7th, on the second page, okay, it said we had $138,000 in state aid. I'm not sure where that number came from. I think, no, I do. That's with the governor. I'm sorry, I just answered that. Okay?
Any other questions on the minutes of that date? What I would suggest is that if you have a specific minutes that, rather than asking them at the table, that this would be a far better discussion to have with either Mrs. Berglund or Dr. Auger offline.
Yeah.
Because it's not as if we can specifically answer some of these questions if you don't understand something was going on at a meeting you were present at.
On the 26th, that Mr. Draper explained that the school committee took action in 210 to set aside fund balance for health care, and that the BEP audit is recommended it be included in the budget.
All right.
I'm really perplexed to understand what that meant.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This is duly noted. All those in favor of passing the work session minutes from February 7th, 2012?
I have some additional comments, ma'am. Okay?
Mr. Mitch, I'm not sure what you want this committee to do other than making your comments. I'm asking for a discussion on whether to pass the minutes or not. You're saying things you don't understand, and that's not really going towards the motion.
Could somebody help clarify some of these
Point of
statements?
order, Madam Chair, point of order.
Yes.
It's absolutely not the time and is inappropriate to question the content of meetings here where we can't change what was done or explain what was done. If someone wants the minutes changed because they feel they don't reflect what occurred at the meeting, then I believe that that's an appropriate motion to make. But it's also something, when you get into these details of what something meant, that has to be dealt with offline with the clerk or with Mr. Draper, and then ask for a correction.
Who said that?
All right.
And what policy says that?
I'm asking
There is a
according to
motion
Robert's
on the
rules.
table.
This kind of extensive conversation cannot possibly be according to Robert's Rules of Order.
The motion
That's my
on the
point of order.
table.
I have,
Okay. I'm going to address.
I have another fundamental question about a number here.
Listen, the motion on the table is to pass the minutes. So all discussion should either be whether you're going to pass it or not. Asking a question is not appropriate to the motion unless it
Excuse me, the minutes of this meeting on page 27 reflect that we have a $575,000 fund balance.
So are you going to disapprove the minutes because of the way the minutes are stated?
No, I don't believe that was an accurate statement, that we have $575,000 fund balance.
Okay. Then again, this doesn't go towards the motion. And if you would like to question the minutes, you can either watch them online and go to that specific spot, or you can ask Mrs. Berglund, or you can ask the superintendent. I'm going to end the discussion and call the vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes from February 7th, 2012, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Thank you. Okay, we are next on to C2, work session minutes. Do I have a motion?
Excuse me.
To approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from February 13th, 2012. All discussion is towards or against that motion.
I have some comments.
I'm asking for a discussion on whether or not to pass the minutes.
Use the word discussion. That seems to be what they want.
Yes. Just to let you know, one of the comments that I want to make on the prior minutes was completely incorrect, and the motion was incorrect on page 30 because it said the motion to request to make cuts of $1.4 million from the proposed budget that was submitted to the town council. We didn't submit a budget to the town council. It was the school committee. So you might just want to look at that.
We did submit a budget yesterday.
You didn't submit it on the 7th. You didn't submit it on the 7th. Okay?
Is there anything towards
I try to read
for or
these
against
things.
this motion?
Let's see. Yes, on the 13th now, Mr. Draper says okay, we have a $300,000 deficit. Yet, we would go to court, it's a $1.2 million.
All right.
So how did that change? Why did that change to $300,000?
Point of order, Madam Chairman.
Yes, point of order.
Asking you to rule those comments out of order, and I'm making a motion to call the question.
Okay, we have a motion to call the question.
Second.
It's inconsistent
All those
with
in favor,
the action, I think.
say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Please note that I'm not voting because I wasn't present at the 13th meeting, and neither was Samoa at the table. But I did read them, so I'll have to accept what I read. So would you make that notation?
Yes.
I
So,
don't think you were present either, Mrs. Abbott.
from what I understand,
Well, Mrs. Evans, two-thirds, who voted to move the question?
Mrs. Avanzotto, Mr. Welch seconded. I had 4 yeses and I had no nos.
Then you got more than two-thirds voting to move
Okay.
the question.
All right, so the question
Did
is
you take
called.
notice, Madam
Yes,
Chair,
I did.
that
I did.
said-
You abstained. Thank you.
I didn't abstain. I said I wasn't present at the meeting.
Okay, I
And
got
neither
that.
were you, Linda. But I'm sure you read it.
That wasn't the vote.
That wasn't the
was not the
motion. So
vote
let's take
on the
a-
minutes. That was the motion to move the question.
So we have a motion to approve the minutes of February 13th.
Out
All
there,
those
I
in
know it.
favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Abstain? I was not
Abstain.
present at that meeting.
Thank you.
Neither was I.
Abstain, not present at the meeting.
All right. All right.
2 abstentions.
Now we come to executive session minutes for February 13th, 2012. Do I have a motion?
So move the motion to move as stated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the executive session minutes of February 13th, 2012, vote aye.
Aye.
Abstain, wasn't present.
Okay.
Also,
Motion passes 3-0 with 3 abstentions. Thank you. All right. Monthly financial reports for 2012. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Mr. Mudge, you wanted to discuss these.
yeah, I guess these can be discussed, right?
Well, there is a motion on the table to approve them,
I
so you can
understand,
either
but-
discuss approving them or not approving them.
Okay, come on.
That is what the
This
discussion will be
information is
about.
provided to us, and, we can't ask any questions about this information?
You may ask questions as they deal with the motion.
What they deal with the topic here, for example, okay? We're expecting to fund, under this, it's a description of what's happened. These are descriptions of what's happened in these various areas since our last meeting. And there's one thing that says, we're talking about the Auditor General and the Vodovic and everything else. We say we're expecting to balance the 12 budget through a combination of these actions and the outcome of court hearings. Could somebody tell me what the outcomes of the court hearings have been?
Haven't heard anything yet.
Now, and my real question was, how much are you relying on the outcome of the court hearings? Are we relying on the court to give us, $400,000, $600,000, $1.2 million? That's significant, I think.
I don't think we have an answer to that to Mr. Mudge.
Well, yeah, but it's in here. We are expecting to balance the budget for 12, okay? For 12. But we don't know what that number is at this point in time.
So do you not want to approve the report because of that? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I think that, is this the latest information? In other words, we don't know today what we're expecting, okay, what our deficit may be that we have to get money either from the town council or from our capital reserve fund. Our fund balance. So I'm kind of looking for a number, because if the court comes back.
Well, Mr. Mudge, we don't know what the court is going to come back, or we would have said that.
Oh, no,
But,
no.
this was discussed
it
extensively
said-
in the last executive
It's-
session minutes, which you did not attend.
Well, we don't have to do that, ma'am.
Well,
because what
that
this
is where we
saying is-
discuss legal
Again,
issues in
Nothing
executive
legal
session.
about this, it's in court. By the way, what I'm
And in
asking
court,
to know
I
is...
think, is a legal issue last time I checked.
is it? The court hearings aren't
They're legal
private?
issues.
Are they?
No,
We
they're
are
public,
experiencing-
but it's
Look,
still
all I'm
a
trying to
legal
do is-
issue.
So what's the difference? It's a public issue. It's a public issue. It goes to court. It's public. You can get the minutes.
Yes,
you can get
Mr.
it.
Mudge,
So
it
what are
is
you hiding?
public.
What do you want to hide?
We're not hiding
Yes, you
anything.
are.
But we can
But
discuss
please,
our
let's
strategy
not-
in executive
your strategy
session
is
as pertinent
ridiculous to start off
Rhode
with.
Island
Okay?
statute
We said we were saving...
4246.
You understand what this says? It says, we've made some savings over here. What are the savings that we've made? And we made $100,000 of savings, $200,000 to $300,000. I will restate the question. I don't care what the court's going to do.
Madam Chairwoman,
What are the state savings at this point in time?
a point of order.
What is your point of order?
I'd like to call the question.
Before you call the question.
Okay, we have to call the question first. So, we're going to take a vote on calling the question. All those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those
Also,
against?
time out.
Okay.
I have a question
Motion
that I need
passes.
to ask about.
So we are now going to call the question. All those in
Point of
favor of
order.
passing the monthly reports, say aye.
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 Point
All
of
those
order.
opposed? No point of order during those two motions.
You know, you guys are beautiful.
Okay, we now go on to
Let's see.
item,
Madam Chair,
we're going
are you
on.
completely ignoring the fact that I had a question about January's financial report?
if you did, we have already gone over that.
You did
And
not
it's-
recognize me. You
Mr.
were
Mudge was
busy.
talking, and then there was a calling of the question. The procedure then says I have or a motion to call the question. I have to take the motion to call the question first, and then we call the question.
Okay, are we using Robert's Rules of Order?
Yes, I am. And we are now on...
One question for you. We've gone
You are
back to-
interrupting Mrs. Benson. You haven't been recognized. We are now moving on to
But
E2.
I want to know,
No,
are
we
we
didn't finish-
using
we didn't
the
finish
Robert
T1.
Rules of Order? Are we using the two new books that we used when people wasn't present to go over a question?
I am
All
using
I'm
Robert's Rules of
asking
Orders.
is for
Thank you, Mrs.
consistency.
Benson.
Don't thank me.
Okay, Mr. Buscardin, you had a
Just
question
a
under E2.
observation.
What was your question? First of all, my procedure has been that we take a motion and then we ask the question. So do I have a motion on E2?
So moved.
Second.
All right, now, Mr. Buscardin.
I just would like to learn, if I can, brought up to speed to what a content task force facilitator is and what they, what they do, and also, which kind of goes right along with two, if I may, Ms. Chairman, is number 3, is the task force members as well.
I can answer that for you. This is a committee that will be writing the curriculum, updating and writing the curriculum for foreign language, grades 8 through high school.
Do you have any other questions, Mr.
No, that was perfectly clear.
Okay, there is a motion on the table to approve E2. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Mr. Buscardin, we didn't lump them together, so I would like to take a motion on E3.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay? Do you have any further questions, Mr. Buscardin?
No further questions.
Okay, all those in favor of approving E3, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, E4, do I have a motion on the table?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Mr. Mudge, you wanted to ask about the appointment of the head football coach.
Yes, was this appointment, was this advertised throughout the state? And
It's advertised on School Spring, our normal channels.
did we have folks from around the state apply, or
As far as I know, we did.
could we get a list of who the candidates were, okay, or get some background, some recommendations, or whatever from the athletic director regarding, I have nothing against...
Well, this is the recommendation from the athletic director and the team of people who did the interviewing.
Could we get the background recommendation, this particular fellow versus somebody else? So we could review that? I mean, did we have, let's say, 10 candidates, and did we get them down to 3? So we could look at the 3 top candidates?
I think at this point, the motion is either you approve or not approve, so if you
That's the
don't
way
want
you
to approve
structured
the
it, of
motion,
course.
you may do that.
Of
But the
course,
motion on
Madam
the
Chairman.
table is to approve the recommendation that was made by the athletic director, so that would be what you could do. Mr.
If I can, I didn't go over this in a great deal of detail, but I do know that Mr. Gilmartin is a teacher in the high school. He has a great deal of background in coaching. There was an extensive search for candidates. They interviewed quite a few of them, and it was a team of people, not just Mr. Marcello. And and so this is the best choice that they are putting forward. Normal procedure here, just like any other coaching position. So I'm very satisfied with this. I know Mr. Gilmartin's been a teacher in the district for some years now and has a good reputation, and so I think we're ready to go with this. As far as I'm
Listen,
concerned.
I certainly don't question that. It's just that I'd like to see the resumes of 2 or 3 other people, at least in advance. So, when you come to the meeting, you're prepared to say, yes, I support them, or no, I don't. I haven't seen any such thing, that's all.
Mr. Welch.
As odd as this may seem, I have similar concerns with Mr. Mudge, and I've always had these concerns. It's not just this particular position. We're asked to approve certain recommendations based on what? It's really a lack of information and background. I've had this problem since I've been on the committee. I voiced this problem with the former superintendent. I didn't say anything about this particular one, so I'm remiss in not bringing it up. But we put a lot of faith in other people doing our job, almost, if you will.
You're right.
I realize that personnel is the prerogative of the superintendent, but without information for us to look at, some kind of information about the individual, their experience in this particular case, being a football coach, et cetera, it just leaves me with the feeling that anyone could say to me at a later time, how did you ever vote to approve that person for that position?
Exactly.
And I'm really not here in supporting where Bill is coming from, that I don't trust the people. I just feel as though that if you're going to ask me for my vote, then I ought to be given enough information to make a decision, no different than when I go and vote for governor or president or anybody else. We have an obligation to our community. And it seems like I'm asking for a lot when I don't really think I'm asking more than what you're asking for. You're asking me to vote in favor of something.
Yes, Dr. Auger.
I just want to respond to that. I understand your point, Mr. Welch.
Yes.
It's well taken. However, I feel that, the structure is really clear that you look to me to do that kind of work and to make sure that the people who are working in this district are well vetted and they're the right people for the right job. And you have that control in that regard. If we go down the road of providing the level of detail that I think you're asking for about this and all the coaches that we put before you, I mean, take a look at the list on number 7. There's about 25 coaches. We will be here for a long time, and your job will become much more complicated than it already is. I think there's got to be a certain point where there's a level of trust and understanding that within the administrative structure that we do what we're required to do to make sure that we have the best candidates for you in front of you. And if that turns out to be wrong, it becomes my responsibility as superintendent and the principal's responsibility as principal of the high school to make it right. whether that means disciplining that person or other things. But, that is what you are paying us to do. And I'm just not sure how we could do it to address the concerns that you have. I understand them. I'm just not sure how we would do that and not fill up your packets with tons of paperwork and have you do a great deal more work than you're already doing.
All right, so the hands I see are Mr. Busgarden, Mrs. Avanzato, Mrs. Benson, and then I want to speak.
Well,
Mr.
I'd like
Busgarden.
to comment again, please.
I have Mr. Busgarden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand where Bill's coming from, and I also feel that we're not here to micromanage. At least my opinion is we're not here to micromanage. However, I do agree with Mr. Welsh. I think it would be nice if we had a little bit more information on perhaps why this one person was chosen over another. If these are all for coaches, I would imagine there's a similar set of criteria that they use to choose the coaches. Would that be fair to say, Mr. Roger, Dr. Roger? That a coach for Mr. Marcello is looking at the head coach for baseball and head coach for football. While they're two different sports, the criteria should be similar.
Sure, there are certifications involved, background in the field, resumes and references from other coaches. All of that plays in. Sure.
I don't know if I would want to get as in depth as you, Mr. Mudge, is seeing the three or four final candidates.
It's not that, but John. But the thing is, this is a new coach, not a reappointee. It's a difference.
Mr. Busgarden
I
has the floor.
understand that. I think maybe we could come find some middle ground. Whereas, for example, this particular coach, here's the reasons why I chose him. He has, all the certifications, then some. He is a teacher in our school district, and this is why, as opposed to just the person's name. And maybe that might help us all out in seeing why this person was chosen over everybody else.
I understand.
Mrs. Avanzato.
Okay. In all fairness, it's our job to give specific direction to the superintendent. And just by stating dissatisfaction, it's not enough. We need to give him an idea of what we'd like to see. I think that John's idea of something simple, maybe only on major positions, and maybe those where there's a committee sitting and they've sat and they've looked at all the different candidates, a short paragraph as to why they chose this person for major positions wouldn't require too much extra work on their part or on our part. I'm not asking to vet 3 people, but maybe just for major positions to have just a small paragraph. I feel a little badly about this particular appointment because we're sort of springing this the last second. We didn't give advanced direction to the superintendent as we should, because that's our job.
I can do that, and if the committee wants me to, I will. But there are a couple of things need to be defined here. What is a major position when it comes to coaching? But also, I can understand, Mr. Mudge, you've been a football player for North Kingstown High School. So this is something where you have an interest, and I understand that. But I never get this question about any of the teachers that are hired. I haven't gotten this question about all of the other coaches that are hired. Where does it end?
Well,
we have well-qualified people, principals, the assistant superintendent, myself, who look at teachers and make recommendations about that, paraprofessionals, so on and so forth. But, so there are lots of positions that require that level of administrative oversight and going through the vetting process. Again, that's what you pay us to do. So I think before that comes to the table for some kind of a vote, if we could kind of think it through and decide, well, what determines what's major? Is the football coach more major than an English teacher at the high school? And then if we're going to go down that road, what level of detail do you need at that point? Because it could get to be a lot of work when you start putting all of the employees in this district in that same category.
Mrs. Benson?
In order to kind of simplify this for you, Dr. O.J., would it be too much for you to put on there as recommended by, you said you had a committee and the director? That would be all, because I have no questions about Mr. Gilmartin. I've known him from the cradle up. I have no questions about him. But even in teachers, if we still use the same method, that when you're going to hire a teacher, you meet with the principal and you meet with one or two members of the faculty, what would be wrong with stating beside that, which would save you a lot of paper and save us a lot of questions? I didn't question this one, but I think that would simplify it a bit. Please don't shoot the messenger, but listen at what the messenger has to say, because I am for simplifying your work to a certain degree and not have the attitude of, if that's what you all want us to do, we'll do it. So it would be very simple if you just put on there as recommended by athletic director and his team. And that would take care of it. That's not even a paragraph for the school secretary to support. So don't shoot me.
Okay, I understand that, but
I didn't say it for an argument.
coach is recommended by the athletic director.
I didn't say it for you to come back and justify, but I was giving it as something that I, as a school committee, would expect. And all of these down here, what would be wrong? Approval of coaches, I don't know half of it, but I do know that there's some strict guidelines coming out concerning football coaches, and I'm sure all of us have read them, because we don't know if we're going to have a position at every football game. Those are things in the pipeline.
If I may, I would welcome some kind of a proposal about how this exactly would work, but, for another night. I wouldn't mind, and not holding this one up right now. It's a point well taken. I wouldn't mind looking at some kind of an option, but I think it would help if we think about it, maybe talk about it a little bit offline and come back next time with some kind of a proposal about how they get written up.
Would I be permitted to come in your office and discuss this with you?
You are always welcome in my office, Mrs. Benson.
That isn't what I got.
Right, I'm going to weigh in here. I see your hand, Mr. Mudge. I'm going to weigh in here beforehand. I want to remind this committee we do have a chain of policy command. And in the chain of policy command, we say we have to follow, take everything up and down. In this particular area of a coach, the coach is responds to the athletic director. The athletic director responds to the principal. The principal responds to Dr. Auger. Our only employee is Dr. Auger. So here we are, getting upset that we haven't seen any other entries for the head coach of the football team. And it's the sort of thing, we've just appointed the world language person. Again, what's the difference between somebody who is curriculating all of the world languages, but we didn't have any problems that person was appointed? I'm seeing a little bit like, what is the difference between a coach versus an advisor that we approve just about every time for the clubs, major clubs, minor clubs, and a curriculum person? And I don't see any. What's the difference? Do we have to then come every time somebody is going to be head of a department, the English department, the history department? And I think what you're asking is very burdensome to be looking at the amount of information. We do have to look at, if we don't like the people that Dr. Auger is bringing towards us, then we can either reject them or approve them. But we don't then say, I want 25 pieces of information for this one person, or we don't ask it for anybody else. And if we're not asking it for, there's no point of order. I am speaking my mind just like you did. So it's the sort of thing of, there's nothing in here that is the sort of thing that if we're not doing it for the curriculum people, we shouldn't be doing it for the coaches. And I don't see any reason to be asking this information. Mr. Mudge, your turn.
Well, why don't we change 16.2? Because I believe 16.2 says the school committee, the superintendent recommends and the school committee approves.
No.
Approves the...
Attorney Carroll, go ahead and comment.
Mr. Mudge, under 1629, what it says is to give advice and consent
Right.
on the appointment by the superintendent of all school department personnel.
Yeah.
All he appoints, you approve, you would give advice and consent.
Consent, yeah, like approve
That's
is
not
consent.
approving.
Can I make a suggestion?
Everybody that's on this agenda, every person that comes on the agenda he is being recommended by the superintendent for appointment. You vote it up, you vote it down. That's it.
It's consent.
But that's it. You can't pick a person.
I'm not arguing. It's that we have to
I'm
approve
going to
it.
give Dr. Auger the floor.
I haven't finished, Doctor. May I, please?
No, I'm going to give Dr. Auger the floor.
I just want to respond to, I think we have a system in place. Mr. Mudge, we have a system in place where we can take care of this. You get the agenda packet on Thursday or Friday. It has a name on it. If you have a question about how that person was selected, what are the qualifications, give me a call. I'll be happy to get that information for you before Tuesday night. But to lock up the meeting and to suggest that we are going to become the selection committee for every coach and every teacher in this district is absurd.
I'm not saying that, and you're taking that to the second level. What I'm saying is, it's advice and consent.
Just give me a call.
Mr. Welch is absolutely right.
You knew this was on the agenda as of Friday. You can call me up and just say...
Point of order.
What is your point of order?
Point of order is this meeting is completely falling apart. People need to be recognized by the chair. Everyone needs to be recognized by the chair. That's my point of order.
I was, and then I was cut off. But
Okay,
my
Mr.
point,
Mudge, you have a minute.
may I finish, please?
Last piece of
Everyone.
May I finish?
Yes, you may
I
finish.
think, Mr. Welch, you said this could be Bill Parcells up here. This could be, Bill Belichick. It's not about the person. This is about hiring people, period, and the consent of people. And I don't care if you want to apply this to anything. We are responsible for the people that get hired in this district, okay, and we provide consent. And all I'm saying is, why did we have 5 years ago, okay, members of the school committee that were in fact on a selection committee with the athletic director? Why didn't we have a school committee member, on a principal selection committee member? So there is some representation from the school committee in some of these key positions. I mean, these are things we did in the past.
Can I?
All right. I will take one last comment, and then we're going to take the vote.
I just want to say that all the power that you are requesting, you already have. You get your packet several days before this meeting.
Yeah.
If what you truly want is just the information, you can give me a call. I'll give you all the information you want. If what you want to do is stop up the meeting, like you're doing, then you bring it up first moment on the stage.
That's out of order.
Well,
Dr.
that's what's
Auger
happening.
has
I'm not
the floor.
stopping. This is a procedural problem.
Dr. Auger
Okay.
has the floor.
You can
But
get
you
the
heard what Mr.
information
Welch
you're asking
said.
for. That's all I
But you
need
hear
to
what
say.
Mr. Welch said.
And I'd like
You
to
know what
move
the
on.
state law is. I just
cutting
made a
off.
recommendation
Okay.
that you just made a recommendation, you just blew out of mine. Okay? Don't put a school committee member on a selection committee or anything like that. Don't ever do that.
Lorraine, roll call vote. The motion is to approve E4.
For the coach. Linda Avanzato.
Yes.
Melvoy Benson.
Yes. And
John Biscardi.
approve with personal knowledge of the individual. Would you put that in the minutes?
Personal
Oh,
knowledge.
see, we're wasting a lot of time.
Yes or no, please?
A. John Biscardi.
Yes.
William Mudge.
I'm going to abstain.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Abstain.
E7. Do I have a motion to approve E7?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Mudge, you brought up E7.
Yes. I played a little bit of sports in all my life, during my life and everything else, and I see most of these coaches have been around, they've done a great job. But when somebody tell me why we need 3 coaches for the girls' softball team, 3 coaches for the girls' softball team.
That's not a bad question.
I think part of it is the JV team.
I don't care what they are. You've got a softball team, girls' softball team.
All right.
It doesn't say JV, it doesn't say anything else. It says 3 coaches, just like it says 3 coaches.
We'll have
for
to
a
get back to you on that, Mr.
state
Mudge. I don't
championship
think
team for
anybody at this
baseball.
table is prepared to answer your question. So, and you were very flippant with my answer, so I'll take, we have a motion on the table. All those voting to approve
I'd like to
E7, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
I'm opposed.
Motion passes.
I'm
We're now at
opposed.
E8, Mrs. Avanzato. First, do I have a motion to approve E8?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Avanzato.
Yes, I just briefly wanted to say thank you to Mr. Draper, specifically for his demeanor, which is always that of a gentleman, which is what Dr. Auger mentioned, so true. You're always very kind, even when comments maybe not were so kind directed at you. So I want to thank you for your patience and wish you best of luck with RISD. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now that,
Would you like to be recognized, Mrs. Benson?
yes, by all means,
I will
by
recognize you.
and I respect you. And I
I recognized you.
And I expect the same thing back.
I'm recognizing. What would you like to say?
I would like to say, when I cut it short and you told me that I could say it when we got to this on the agenda, I will repeat again, I'm very proud and happy for you because you are beginning your career, you have a young family, and when you see you can make a promotion, go to it. The only thing I'm worried about, whose back are they going to put it on now? And I'm just waiting to see the pecking order. So good luck to you. I know people at the School of Design, and you will do a good job. You went with great recommendations, and I'm very proud. But as I stated, the School of Design's gain is really our loss, because if you watch the horse races, I'm a sport enthusiast. I watch the races, the stock cars, the football, the basketball, and the baseball. You know, there always has to be one that they dump on. So I'm glad you're getting that load off of your back. And I'm saying it in public, and I'm saying it for certain members that were, you're sitting here, you know who you are, that was always guilty of criticizing him. And another thing I want to add, wherever you went, you were a representative of the school committee. And one thing for sure, you looked and dressed like a professional. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer.
That's right. You don't work in a coal mine in a tuxedo.
Mr. Draper, you will be missed. I must admit that the first time you came in and you interviewed, I remembered that you had on a tie, and I noted the tie. It was very professional looking, and as I looked at the tie, I became convinced that there were Mickey Mouse ears subtly in the tie. And later on, when you were hired, I asked you about your tie, and you said, yes, there really were Mickey Mouse ears. And I think that just epitomizes your being able to sit here through 2 hours of this meeting and still have a sense of humor about you despite these schools committees. So I'm sure you will do well at RISD. You will be missed.
Well, he's leaving. That's why he's smiling.
I'd actually like to recommend that you disapprove this one.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. So with some reluctance, I'd like to hear your vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Double aye.
No.
Thank you very much. All right, so that brings us to the unfinished business part of our meeting. And Dr. Auger or Mr. Draper, we have the 2011-2012 budget.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Earlier, Mr. Mudge had a question in regards to the savings. That was actually gone over in court. It was actually the last day of testimony. We had an updated projection, and that's the one that sits before you. Long story short, between savings in positions that have been left vacant, notably among them the facility supervisor, the efforts of different people in or divisions throughout the school district, we've been able to save money by leaving positions. Additionally, we had some other savings versus budget in a few different areas. We've had a mild winter, as everybody's aware. So those are where we've made up ground. I will not be surprised if we give back some of that. We do know that we have some special education costs that we have to keep an eye on. And in our next month's report, you'll see where we think we're going to end up. But that is the reason for the differences we've had in 2011 and 12.
Thank you.
Mr.
Mudge, do you have a question?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Is that been documented someplace, that how we're making cuts? I haven't seen anything.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we handed in that into the court, as well as in your financial report. I give some information there as to which areas we've been saving.
So, well, see, everything was up in the air in terms of whether it said we had a $1.2 million deficit, and that it got down to, from what I understand, and I'd say that I understand, which I probably don't, that the deficit really now is $300,000.
To be clear, both to the committee and as we stated in court, right now, this is where we think we're going to end up by the end of the year. And when we initially provided the information in December, we said, okay, if everything goes against us, this is as bad as it could get. And then as we refine our projections based on the fact that we did not have an agreement with the ESP union, that's when we started to refine our numbers. See, up to that point, up until December, when an impasse was declared, it was unclear as to how much in concessions we could gain towards what we had budgeted. And as the members of the committee are aware, when we budgeted, we did so over a year ago with the expectation that we would have a very high copay on our health insurance. And that is the lion's share of the increased costs that we're seeing this year.
Yeah, again, I'm a little perplexed to understand how we went from $1.2 million down to $300,000. That's just was what my question was. And because if we're down that far, my question would be, why are we in court? And why are we spending money in court?
Because they sued us.
No, but no.
Yeah, that's a little out of our hands, Mr. Mudge.
Sued us, Bill.
Oh, I understand, but we know that was going to happen. Phil, you know that was going to happen. Okay? But the fact
I didn't know they were going to sue us.
We didn't know that was going to
I
happen.
filed a deficit reduction plan.
We're one
you
town.
knew
Okay, let's make sure we have, Mr. Mudge has the floor.
My
but-
question is I still don't understand, could somebody give us the numbers on where we stand right now? Because if we're down to zero, we shouldn't be in court. And chewing up valuable money, that's all.
I'll explain some of the travel of this case. One, when we looked at a deficit reduction plan, it was done in December when we were dealing with the fact that we could not come to terms with our ESP union. At that time, there was no indication that we would be going to court or that we would be sued by the town. At that time, it was a deficit reduction plan as required by state law. Now, what we've done since then is we've presented to the court what our appropriation was versus what we anticipate for revenue. And that is a very important distinction because the Department of Education has ruled the appropriation is what we should depend upon. However, it is the town's assertion that is the anticipated revenue we should expect. Those are two different numbers. And until that is determined by the court, in our case, that is unclear. If it were not to be determined by the court and it were to be determined by the Board of Education, it would be the amount of our appropriation, which is $58,092,043.
Mrs.
Yeah,
Avanzato.
but if you, I haven't
No.
quite finished, one more, and
Well,
I'll be
I-
done. I'm not done. In reference to that budget, something that's very, not clear to me. If you go to our committee packet, 44, page 44, you show, in fact, that, a revenue, of state revenue of $10.188 million, but in fact, it was really $10.64 million, or some, and you show on that page $176,000 loss, which has been changed now, in state revenue, but in fact, that's not the case, because the state revenue was $10,674,000. So I'm trying to understand, how does this play into this? When in fact, the state revenue again was $10,674,000 for 12, and you will have it now listed as $10,188,000.
Mr. Mudge, I'll say this in two pieces. One, we covered all the details at the executive session with the attorney present, speaking specifically to the court case. I understand your disagreement with the numbers and your feeling that it should be approached in a different manner, but I can't correct that. All I can do is say that we covered this in executive session.
Well, these are public numbers.
I'm going to now call on Mrs. Avanzato.
May I speak?
I was actually going to say the exact same thing, that we knew from Mr. Draper and Dr. Auger, we've been told all along, as the fund went down and was spent down, we approved it and we were told what it was spent on all along. There was nothing we didn't know. And also in terms of where we were with our plan to address the deficit reduction, those numbers were carefully gone over in several executive sessions. Why we're in court? I don't know. You have to ask the town. But I think the judge was confused, to be honest, because he basically said, go figure it out amongst yourselves and come back here later. And now later, there's barely a deficit at all. It's been because they didn't allow us the opportunity to address the issue before they took it to court and sued us, unfortunately.
Well,
and that is resulting in large attorney fees. I don't think it's good for the town.
Linda, all I can
Mrs.
say is,
Benson,
Linda,
I'm going to recognize Mrs. Benson.
I would like to say that you are right in part, Mrs. Avanzato. We discussed it in executive meeting, and the whole situation arrived from the fact that we built a budget, put in the budget what we were going to get from the union, and refused to negotiate with them. I don't know why the whole truth is so hard to be told. That's part of it. The next part of it is the fact that we spent money that wasn't budgeted for. And when you have a budget, you follow the budget. And large sums were spent for what we wasn't budgeted for. Every school committee within America have budget problems. Every school committee within America have little funds that they keep aside from things. But when we overspend them, we have to give account of them. And I can give you one that it wasn't budgeted for. And $10,000 may be a small price, but when we had to pay $10,000 to keep the former superintendent, Dr. Thornton, from carrying us to court, that wasn't budgeted for because we had paid him what we owed him. It's little things like that that is, am I wrong, Mrs. Avanzato?
Yes.
I think the attorney will testify to the fact that
You just said you paid him what you owed him.
that she recommended it. You know, there's a pervasiveness up here that when certain people talk, you got to go by the fabulous four, and they got to agree on it. And the public sees it.
All right, thank you,
The
Mrs.
public sees
Benson.
it.
If you're
Please.
going to sit here and
Please,
start criticizing
please.
the rest of the committee, I am going to cut you off.
That's not your job.
Yes, it is. I'm
That's not
here to
your
keep
job
decorum
to
and keep the
stall
meeting going.
free
So
speech.
if you have something
I
that you
know
would like
I'm
to
not a
say
member
that's
of the
positive,
Fabulous
you may
Four.
continue, but I am
I'm
not going to
a member
go
of
down the
Fabulous
road
Four,
of name
and
calling.
you have
That's
made
it. I'm cutting you
That's
off.
not name calling, that's truth.
Thank you, Mrs. Benson. Dr.
Are you
Ajay, do you have
afraid to
anything
admit
that
that
you
we
want
had to give
to
him
say under
10,000
2012,
At the
2013
recommendation of the
budget?
attorney? Are you afraid to admit that, members?
Mrs. Benson, I'm cutting you off on your time. I'm going on to 2012, 2013.
You have committed
Mr.
a
Welch.
miracle.
Yeah, you went right by the current budget.
Well, that's what we've been talking on for the last...
Well, I had something to say on...
All right, go ahead, Mr. Welch.
Very nice.
Being concerned how we continue to go forward about a number of issues, and I know that the budget has been submitted, but I would like to make a motion that all future out-of-district travel requests be brought before the school committee for approval.
Second.
So, let's... Dr.
I
Ajay, would you
make
like to
the
comment on that?
The third second. Please put me down as a second also.
There's just 1 second. Thank you. I'll put you down as if you want to say something.
I didn't say something. I asked the secretary
Again,
to put
you
down
know-
that I said second.
Thank you, Mrs. Benson. Dr. Ajay has the floor.
I think that this one, again, Mr. Welch, I feel like we're getting into a lot of micromanaging right now. Mr. Draper just talked about how we have done a great deal to freeze the budget, and at my discretion and with his help and my other administrators' help, we have reduced that balance significantly, as you can see. And we're still doing everything we can to do that. There are a number of situations where people will need to travel. I don't know all of them coming up. I don't think there are all that many, to tell you the truth, but there are some instances where I need to send people to different things for different reasons. And to single this out as opposed to something else, I think it paints that kind of thing as what it isn't. I recently went to a conference. I feel it was one of the most important things I did this year in terms of my own professional development, and I would do it again in a minute, and it was out of state. It was an important thing for me to do. It's an important thing for all of us to get better. When we have the opportunity, we bring people here. We have the professional development experiences here, and you have to trust in my discretion and the discretion of the administrators that we're going to do everything we can to save money when we do professional development. And we're going to make wise decisions. And if you don't like the decisions that I make, then it's time for me to go. So you have that discretion over me, and you need to exercise that. If I'm not doing a good job, you need to do that. But to pull out some kind of an arbitrary rule like that, and again, this is something that I have had no one told me this was coming until 1 minute ago. So I'd appreciate a little heads up on something like that, so we can talk about it. I can tell you these things face to face in private, and maybe you might think differently before we get to the stage. But I just don't like the insinuation that if there is a professional development piece or anything where I need to send somebody out of state, that is seen as excessive spending, irresponsible of any kind. I wouldn't do that. So.
Mrs. Avanzato.
I really don't think any such insinuation was being made. And I understand you may feel sensitive about it. It's not that anything is directed personally at anyone. And I want to recognize the efforts that have been made by this administration to do things far differently than they've been done in the past. And we have had major problems in this district in the not-too-distant past with abuses. Things have totally changed since then, and I don't think, and I know Mr. Welsh is aware of that, and he's also aware that we are a school district, and from time to time, travel may be required for educational purposes. But we also have to show as a school committee, the taxpayers and the public, that we're trying to practice scrutiny and we're trying to look at things. It's really, I am positive, not anything personal whatsoever.
Well, I don't believe it's anything personal, but what I'm not happy about is that I think there is an insinuation that if there's an out-of-state element to anything, that is not responsible spending. And I just disagree with that. It's not my first choice for any kind of professional development, but when it's necessary, I think there's just got to be a level of discretion that you allow me and my administrators about making decisions like that. We've had a number of situations where we brought people in and saved a lot of money. But if you can't do that, you can't do that. It's still an important thing to do. And it is the one thing that Mr. Welch asked for. He didn't ask for, other items on the budget that are equally expensive, that I have discretion over to come before you. It was just that one.
This is only
Right now, we have an item of, we have a standing item of $5,000 or more, that if it gets in excess of that, you need to know about it, you need to vote on it over here. I would say the same thing about travel. If it gets to that level, that will come before you. But it's just like any other item on the budget, that there's a certain point where you have to say, okay, do I trust he's making good decisions or not? And leave it to that. And if you get to a point where you notice that, like hiring a coach, if there's a string of really bad coaches all of a sudden in the district, you need to hold me responsible for that. And I'll hold the administrators who work for me responsible for that. But I think that choosing particular things because they have a certain air to them about maybe this is kind of an irresponsible way to go, I think it does suggest that kind of thing, because it was the one thing that has been picked on here. So, I'm just recommending that that's not something that you approve tonight.
I see the hands of Mr. Mudge, Mrs. Benson, Mr. Biscardin. I'm going to make a question about the motion. The motion, as I've heard it, is that there be no out-of-district travel for any employee. Am I correct?
The way I recorded that, Mr. Welch, was that a motion that all future out-of-district travel requests go before the school committee.
So I guess what I'm thinking of is, so when Dr. Humbert wants to go over to Coventry to see our students, she would be out of district. When Rachel Santa goes out of district to a different school,
make it out of state. That's
when
really what
the director of athletics goes up to Warwick to the basketball game, when Dr. Kenworthy goes up to Ride, I'm just thinking, this becomes...
Could you amend the motion?
Yes. I would hope so, because I'm just thinking you've created a nightmare. I would almost say, why don't we save the motion for the next meeting and discuss this, because I think any motions that are made here are not going to be as thought out as what your purpose is. That was also the whole point of giving everybody these pads, was so that we could write out the motion. So that's my comment of... I would talk to the superintendent to get the exact wording of what you want to do, because I think you've just created that every person that goes anywhere cannot go to meetings because that's out of district.
That was not the intent.
That I didn't interpret that as the intent, Mr. Welch.
I'll go
Dr.
Mr. Mudge, Mrs. Benson, Mr. Busgarden.
I'm getting a little concerned, Dr. O'Shea, because every time somebody asks a question, you resent, the school committee members, Mr. Welch, myself, or anybody else, questioning what's going on. And what your suggestion is, do nothing, okay? We'll let the horse gets out of the barn, then we'll close the door afterwards. But something? People elected us to do a job. We have a fiduciary responsibility to this community. And to sit here and say, I guess what you're saying, Dr. O'Shea, is, why don't we replace all these members with potted plants? Because you say, trust me, I'm going to do everything right, don't worry about it, and go away. Well, that's not what we're elected for.
I'd like to respond to that.
Huh?
Okay, let me tell you what I'm saying.
Let me finish, please.
Okay.
And I think Mr. Welch was basically saying the same thing, just like the position before we talked about, the coaching and some other positions. The school committee does have a role. Okay?
Absolutely, you have a role.
Okay.
You're right.
And
let me answer the question. You said you think what I'm saying. Let me tell you exactly what I'm saying. If I have something going on where I need to send somebody out of state, or if I have a coach on the agenda, you have every right to ask me about it. And I have every right to be accountable to you about the decision that I make. You get an agenda packet several days in advance. I don't understand why you can't call me and ask me, what was the criteria for choosing that coach? Why did the team pick that? I will find that information and I will get it to you. You have that responsibility to oversee these things. You're right. To bring this up on the stage with no forewarning to me at all, I just don't think is right. I believe it falls in the neighborhood of micromanaging.
Well,
And I have no problem with any member of the committee saying, listen, I understand, there's this conference and people are going to it, and can you tell me about that? And I'll be happy to. And if you don't like the rationale for that and you don't like the way that I'm spending money, then you control that. But you don't need to have that level of discretion on the stage. You have every right to question these things, Bill, and I hope that you do. Give me a call. I've said that right from the beginning. I'm not hiding anything. What I'm thinking you're saying, Mr. Mudge, is that before you ask questions, you're making insinuations that things are wrong. That's what I'm worried about. Everything seems to be,
for example,
a conspiracy.
For example.
Everything.
For example.
Including the hiring of a football coach tonight.
Absolutely, and I object to that. I absolutely object to that because
if you have concerns about it, give me a call.
I'm having concerns about how we address issues, and it's the process.
Well,
okay.
I'm going to let Mrs. Benson have the floor next.
And I would ask that you please bear with me, Madam President. I didn't interpret Mr. Welch's motion to go to that extent. My mind readily went back to when a group of people under the last administration, not you, Dr. O.J., went to Chicago to see how they operate schools on the South Side. I asked for a report when they got back. We never knew anything about it. This is the year of tightening budgets.
I took a team of people to that school, and when I came back, I did report to the committee about what happened. In fact, the school committee member came to that school with me.
On your shoulder.
Mrs. Benson, you have the floor.
And we learned a lot from it, and we got better because of it.
Would you please not wear your feelings on your shoulder? You're doing a good job. And I'll tell you that. But if you want to know why some people are reluctant to come in your office and talk to you, kind of go back over what you say. I didn't even go in and talk with you about the budget. And I don't think Mr. Welch meant that. I don't think he meant that.
Mr. Welch has indicated...
I'm not through.
All right.
I'm not through. And we spent a lot of times here tonight with people explaining themselves. Do the right thing. And don't wear your feelings on your shoulder. If you did, I wouldn't be sitting here.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Benson.
I'm not through.
You are bordering on being not very friendly, so I would ask you to finish up.
That's your interpretation of not being friendly.
That's right, and I'm the chair, so I'm asking you to wrap it up.
It doesn't depend on you, because you're known not to be
Okay,
friendly.
Mrs. Benson, would you like to wrap up your comments here, please, on the motion of whether or not to approve it or disapprove it?
Well, first of all, we should amend the motion.
I think Mr. Welch has a comment that he would like to make, so I'll actually turn it over to Mr. Welch.
Yes. I would like to have this motion tabled until the next meeting to give us all a chance to think through what I said. You know, the reality is it's not addressed, my motion was not addressed at the current administration at all, not even the previous administration. It's on our budget that needs to find ways of not affecting directly the education. We're looking for money. And I didn't say to freeze out that there wouldn't be any. I said, asking for the administration in my motion to come to us and let us say, yes, that's a valid thing, let's go with it. Not because I'm trying to micromanage, I'm trying to, in all different ways, looking at things that we can save jobs, that we can deliver the right education, and if looking at out-of-state transportation and hotel costs, et cetera, it should be something that we look at, and we have to look at nickels and dimes, folks. That's all I'm trying to get to. It's not an insinuation of lack of trust. It wasn't an insinuation of lack of trust about the coach. So I would ask that you allow this to be tabled and put off until the next agenda when everybody's had a chance to think through this. Thank you.
And I withdraw my second at the request of your tabling it. And may I say one thing?
You've withdrawn your motion. Dr. Auger.
Wait just a minute.
Well, I'm
That
looking at the
little speech
time,
that you
and it is
gave about going to war or
9:35.
somewhere,
You've had your
you
time, the
generate
motion has
more
been tabled,
confusion than
so
you
there's
do
no longer any
getting along.
discussion on the motion. So since there is no more discussion on the motion, we will then go to the next item. And actually, Dr. Auger, that's the budget for next year, but I will say this, it is 9:35.
I don't have anything on the budget for next year. We've done plenty on that, and there will be plenty to come.
I have a couple of questions, please.
What is the order of things that you would like to take, Dr. Auger, for the evening, since it is 9:35?
I think
Can we finish the budget discussion, please?
No.
What do you mean, no?
Dr. Auger has said he has nothing more to discuss.
Budget
and
is for
so
the committee members as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge. I'm asking him for the order that he would like to take things.
I think,
Dr. Auger.
I think it's important that we look at the DMS roof.
Yes, I'd like to hear about that.
That's off the table, Dr. Auger. We have nothing to do with that. The town...
Dr. Auger has the floor,
Excuse me.
please. Yes, and what else, Dr. Auger?
Let him say
I think that would be the first thing, and then go back to the order of the agenda.
All right. Then actually, I know our attorney has asked me to take what has been marked as item E. I'm sorry, I scribbled it out. So yes, if we could take item E first, and resignation of employee. Ms. Carroll, could you direct us as to what...
Point of order, please.
What is your point of order?
Point of order is, we were discussing item B, the 12-13 budget. We haven't completed that yet.
No, we had not discussed item B. Dr. Auger said he had nothing to discuss on that item.
Well,
so
what the hell does that mean?
Now are jumping to the
what am
items
I,
that
potted
need to
plant
take
here?
precedent.
I don't have anything to say about it?
You'll have to wait.
Why?
Because
Why?
our attorney has said we need to discuss item
I don't care what the
D
attorney
and
said.
E. Well, that's too bad, Mr. Mudge.
We have
Thank you very much.
a $60 million budget we're trying to save.
Mr. Mudge.
$60 million budget, and that's how you want to send it to the town council?
Mr. Mudge, you don't have the floor.
Well, you are
Attorney
something.
Carroll.
Madam Chair,
Chairman, you are something.
We discussed in executive session the job performance of an individual. The person was duly noticed of this. That individual has provided a resignation to the district. This is a bus driver, and you need to act on that resignation based on the discussion that we had.
All right, so do I have a motion to accept or reject the resignation of the employee? Mr. Welch.
Make a motion to reject the employee's request for resignation.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor to reject the employee resignation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I abstain.
All right, motion passes.
Please note that I didn't vote either way
You abstained.
due to
Thank
information.
you.
I didn't abstain. Don't put anything in my mouth.
You weren't at
You
the
have
meeting,
enough
Mr. Benson.
coming out of yours to
If
account
you
for.
don't accept or reject the motion, then you abstain.
You have enough coming out of yours. to
Thank you,
accept.
Mrs. Benson. Okay.
Madam
did
Chair,
not.
based on the decision that you just made on E, you need to determine whether or not to terminate the bus driver.
Do I have a motion to terminate or not? Mr. Welch.
Make a motion to terminate the employee.
Second?
Okay.
Comment, please. These were all discussed appropriately in executive session, right?
That's correct.
Correct.
The person was
Fine.
duly
So
notified.
I'm abstaining on both of them. I
Thank
didn't
you.
attend the meeting.
All right.
If that's the language
motion-
you wanted to use, Madam Chair, I will let you use the language abstain, was not present at executive meeting. Please note.
Thank you, Mrs. Benson. All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, Dr. Auger has asked us to go to item G.
Yes, this is an item that I recommend that you approve, the awarding of architectural services and engineering services for the roof. This is in preparation that we get our bond approved, and that will put us in shape to be ready to go for June. We're trying to line up a lot of things. It's a very tight timeline. If we don't do that this week, losing 2 weeks is going to be really costly to us right now. So we're trying to coordinate this effort. By the way, the date of the bond to approve the entire roof and a lot of other items around the district is April 3rd. You're going to be hearing a lot from me and from a lot of people about the importance of this bond. And one of the measures that we need to approve is moving forward with this, with the architectural services as described right now, so that we will be in a place that if this does become approved on April 3rd, that we would be ready to act and do the work on the Davisville Middle School roof right away once the kids leave this summer. Delaying it all may cost us some weeks in the summer and could compromise our ability to do it this year as opposed to next year.
Mr. Welch.
Yes. It seems the architect is required as per the Regents and the Rhode Island Department of Education. I want to make a motion to approve this recommendation from the superintendent to award a contract of $38,700, not to exceed. Monday night at the town council meeting, the town manager informed the town council that he was going to be moving to have this done as, regardless of whether the bond passes or not, this work needs to be done, and the architect's approval and work has to be done according to RIDE and the Regents.
I'll second that motion.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor and a second.
Excuse me?
Discussion.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
Maybe I missed something. I think at this town council meeting that I went to, that in fact the town is in charge of this project. We certainly need it. We all agree. There's no question about that. And the council will be managing the project regardless whether it's bond money or regardless if it comes out of the whoever's fund surplus. So this is new. I think the contract's going to be signed imminently. So whether we approve it or not, maybe we should approve it for just to say we support it. But our approval is not necessary because we are not issuing the contract, nor are we going to manage the contract or oversee the contract. Okay? And I think the town made that clear to us.
You know, I don't want to slow this down, and therefore I'm recommending approval of this tonight. And for the sake of the town, I hope that they approve as well. However, it is pretty clear to me that buildings and grounds are under this group right here. The superintendent and the school committee oversee the buildings and grounds of the school department. So I think in another conversation, there needs to be a conversation about who oversees this. I appreciate Mr. Embry trying to step up and do this, but I don't see that as his jurisdiction. This is just about any other project that's ever gone before, that this is a building of the school department and therefore should be overseen by the school committee and the superintendent. So I don't want to get into that particular argument tonight. It is something that I would challenge in the future, and I don't want to slow things down. But I do feel that, everything I know about our jurisdiction sees that the school committee and the superintendent are overseeing the facilities and grounds of the school department.
Are we funding this? Is this an expenditure to fund this?
It's even recognized don't answer.
Are we paying for this, the school committee? Would we have
It
to-
says right on your agenda, Bill, that this particular piece is funded by the town.
Mrs. Avanzato?
Town funds it, but we're in charge.
That's how it works.
It's not how it works, Linda. Believe me.
Okay.
We
I
oversee
have
the
the floor, I
school.
believe. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Mrs. Avanzato, you have the floor.
Okay.
You know,
I just,
and that
I-
same thing goes for both
I
of
want
us
to-
because we.
Okay, Mrs.
I would-
Avanzato has the floor, and you're next, Mrs.
First of
Benson.
all, I would like to request, I agree, first of all, with Dr. Ogier, I don't want to slow this project down. I'm glad and I appreciate the town manager having said that they're going to fund the project, whether it be through bond funds or not. That's a very good thing. This idea that they've all of a sudden taken over the project is just bizarre and goes along with several other strange things that have been happening lately that I don't think are helpful. And I would like a legal opinion from our council, since we are, by law, in charge of the buildings and anything to do with the buildings while they are being used as schools. So I would ask for our legal counsel, and I would ask for this issue to be put off, to be discussed maybe at the next meeting, and just while we get through the approval on this architect issue, and then we can deal with the issue of who's in charge and who's trying to take over for whatever reason, I don't know.
Well, that's certainly reasonable.
Mrs. Avanzato, are you asking for the opinion right now from our council?
I think you want a written opinion that, I think, and I'd like a vote from the committee to do that written opinion. So I would base it on 1629, the duties of the school committee. But I don't want you to mix up the two things. You need to move forward on the action. Agreed. The action that's on the agenda, and then I can give you a written opinion, and I'll get it to you before the next meeting.
Can we do it by
Please
consensus?
including there the funding aspect of that.
We have a motion on the table, so what we can do is, after we take the motion on the table, then we can then move forward with your suggestion, Mrs. Avanzato. Mrs. Benson?
I was going to speak to the point of the last meeting I was at, and you were at, Mrs. Avanzato. I think you made the statement that the buildings don't belong to the school committee, and let's go and have the town. So you've changed your opinion on that. Because I think you were the one that made the motion that we go to the town, that we don't own the buildings.
If I may, Madam Chair?
Yes, Mrs. Avanzato.
Just because, since that was directed specifically at me, I just want to say, they fund us. That's how it works. We are a department of the town. They fund us. It is their
I'm
responsibility
glad
to
to see
fund.
that we are recognizing
Mrs.
that.
Avanzato has the floor.
We own the buildings, though, she's right.
Mrs. Avanzato has the floor.
To fund our needs. And one of those needs being a roof. We don't have the money for the roof, so they are obligated to fund us. I never said
I
that
understand.
I never said that they were in charge or that
Maybe I
they would
used the wrong
control all the
word.
projects. If we're going to renovate the inside of this building, is the town council going to come over and take over every project we do? There's no difference between that and the roof. So that would be my point. And I just,
Mrs. Azzavano, to keep from getting in a discussion, I will withdraw what I said for the piece. But let's go back and look at the minutes and read your statement, because you explicitly said, we don't own the buildings. Turn it over to the town. Now we are taking the ownership back.
No, we own the buildings. I think there's probably...
Right, so we have a motion on the
I won't
floor
get in
and
a
a
discussion
second.
about that because
Let's take a vote
we
on the
had to
motion on the
turn
floor.
Wickford over to the town.
Go ahead. You want a roll call? Go.
Yes, let's go do a roll call vote.
John Biscardin.
Yes.
Larry Cerisi. Oh, I'm sorry, he's not here. William Mudge.
I'm abstaining because it's unnecessary.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Absolutely.
Linda Avanzato.
yes.
Mel Boyd Benson.
I've made it clear several times, we don't want the rain.
Is that a yes?
I'm going to clarify it. We don't want the children sitting in the school with the rain, but I disagree, Mr. Welch and Dr. O.J. You can laugh all you want. I disagree at the way we are phasing it, so I vote no. We are continuing this squabble.
Okay, that's what we needed,
between
Mrs.
the
Benson. It was
towns.
just a yes or no. Thank you very much.
Madam Secretary, since you're the Secretary of the School Committee, would you please include my statements in the minute?
Yes, I will, Mrs. Benson.
So,
And it's
Mrs.
not your
Avanzato,
place
you
to
had a
tell her she
request
can't.
of information for next time, and that was to get a written opinion from the attorney. Is there any further discussion on that, or that we're not voting on it? We're just basically saying that if there's anybody who doesn't want to do that, go ahead and say your piece now. I want to say something, Mr. Mudge?
Yes, thank you, please. I think before we get the attorneys involved, it would be only appropriate that the superintendent send a letter to the town manager and get something back in writing, like you would do in any professional
We're not asking
organization.
for the attorneys to be
Okay?
involved. We're only asking
Okay.
for an opinion from our attorney.
But my point is, I'm asking to send a letter to the town manager and let him respond. You have hearsay now, okay? And of course, they said that publicly as well. So before we go to attorney, we better get the thing documented so we know what we're asking the question of, or, to the attorney, that's all.
Okay.
Simple letter. Save the money.
Doctor, go ahead, Mrs. Avanzato.
Point of clarification, on our agenda, under this item, it says the town manager has asked that all contracting for the work go through the town finance process and that a town PO will be issued for this work. They've made it clear that they consider themselves now in charge of the project, and they obviously communicated that to the superintendent. It's on our agenda, and based on comments also at the meeting of the town council, which is a public meeting and is recorded and will be in the minutes eventually, that's what I based my statements on and my request for a legal opinion.
Dr. Auger, what is the next item that you would like to take at this point?
I would like to approve the maintenance truck bid that's been on this agenda for about the last 6 months.
Not quite.
Do we need the plow?
Not quite. Just about 6.
All right, so we are looking at item F1, the maintenance truck bid. Do I have a motion on the maintenance truck bid? Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, discussion.
I think it's illegal.
Okay.
Could we get an opinion from the attorney?
The fact that this is a 4-year commitment, I think our commitments only go to 3.
It's not us.
3 years is for personnel.
There's 4 annual installments.
3 years is
Bill?
for personnel.
Yep.
It's not us. We're making this recommendation to the town council. The town council is the only one that can enter into this lease.
Again, I'm not sure you can go to a 4-year.
But I'm just saying, it's the town council who will have to deal with that, not us.
Okay.
There is a 3-year proposal in that as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it would be the town, because we can't do it. The town is the entity.
Yeah, but you see what my point was.
No, I
thought
understand
that-
what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion?
Well-
Mrs. Benson and Mr. Busgarden. Mrs. Benson.
Thank you. I was going to say that in reading in depth the duties of the school committee, I think it says that one school committee is not obligated to go along with some of the debts that the previous committee has made. And when the point was brought out, whether it was 3 or 4, I find that to be a moot question now that Mr. Welch has put it out, brought the information to light that it has to go through the town council. So that was what I was going to say.
Mr. Busgarden, and then Mr. Welch and Mrs. Avanzato.
I hesitate to comment on this because this has started before I was seated. So if I bring up anything that's been done that I'm not aware of, I apologize and just let me know. But I don't recall ever seeing an analysis of what the truck is to be used for and why we need the vehicle that's being suggested, and if there was a way to peel off some of the responsibilities of this truck to another entity, whether it be one of the companies that currently push snow for us, or the town, or an additional company to push snow. But is there a way that we could minimize the impact of the size and price of the vehicle by simply subcontracting some of the duties away from it? I don't know if that was done or not, but...
Mr. Draper, would you like to talk about the other things that the truck does besides snow?
Sure. This question was brought up before, Mr. Buskardin, relating to this. That's why it's kind of been around on our agenda for a while. The Public Works actually purchased 2 through a planned replacement and a 3rd through an emergency replacement of equipment very similar to this truck. And the reason for the selection is not only snow plowing, but also the height of the vehicle, the ground clearance off the curbs, and some of the other things we run into on our grounds areas is one of the reasons for the selection of this type of vehicle. Also with the toolboxes, the vehicle is used for maintenance response throughout the district, so we find that utility body is suitable for what we're going to be doing with it. The four-wheel drive is primarily for snow, but it is also used for the grounds work. We occasionally use it in some of the fields and off areas that we encounter. Also, some of the grounds throughout the district, you'll get into trails and paths that go into some of the grounds that are kind of off the side of some of the schools. So that's the reason for the selection of the equipment.
But was it ever discussed about eliminating the snow removal duties from the vehicle? Because if you were to, and maybe if it was, I apologize, I never saw anything about it, and maybe it doesn't balance, but on paper, you could, at least on paper, you could subcontract the pushing of the snow out, and that would, then you could then go from a F-350 to an F-250. You would still have the ground clearance to do the curbs, still be four-wheel drive, and you would take the abuse factor off of that vehicle, which would effectively extend the life of a vehicle, pushing snow versus not pushing snow.
One of the things we do with this vehicle, because typically this vehicle will be used by our maintenance lead, not that it can't be used by anybody, it can, but typically it'll be used by our maintenance lead. What we do in the case of snow removal specifically is we share that person with Public Works. So in essence, they're operating the same as a Public Works vehicle. Another reason why this equipment is very similar, if not identical, to the same equipment that Public Works purchased for that purpose. When we do send it out for snow removal, in fact, besides some minor equipment use around here in the schools, we'll actually jump in on the town plow routes. And that was one of the topics of discussion. So this piece of equipment, what will happen, for example, is, let's say, Wednesday morning, if we have a snow event, I'll contact Dave Young, who's our maintenance lead during the day, and I'll say, what are the ground conditions? He'll actually be doing a town plow route if there's enough snow on the ground. If there's not enough, he'll be monitoring our parking lots.
John?
Mr. Welch.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, John, that I contacted personally Phil Bergeron from Public Works, and I asked if they didn't have a truck that could handle this, and exactly what Mr. Draper said was they purchased 2 trucks and had an emergency because one blew up. But he said he relies upon the use of that truck after we're done with it, doing what we use it for. We primarily use it for the elementary schools, don't we, for plowing?
Yeah. Elementary's what we do.
He needed that truck. Okay, so it's just for the snow plowing purposes, the town gets advantage. One of the things that has happened between the school district and the town Public Works is we've been trading stuff back and forth at no cost to either one or the other, just by working together. It isn't consolidation as consolidation would be called, but it really is. It's to the advantage of the town and the taxpayers because we're utilizing each other's services when we have them. And one of the places, I believe, was the electrician as well, and the plumber. The town doesn't have them, but we do, and, it's worked to the advantage of the town.
I believe the last time we had this on our agenda as a buying item, we had a letter in our packet from Mr. Embry requesting that we get it so that we could use it in, basically, in in conjunction with the town, because they will be using this vehicle as much as we are, in terms of, us coordinating our efforts together. Mrs. Avanzato. Earlier you did.
To amend the motion. I do want to amend this. I would like to amend the motion that if the town has a problem with the 4-year issue, that I would like to amend it to have an alternative of 3 years that we vote on now, and we don't have to come back to the table because they need the motion.
Pretty smart.
Okay,
I second that.
All right, so we have an amended motion and a second.
I
Is
second
there
that
any-
amended motion. Very good.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the amendment, Mr. Mudge?
Not on the amendment.
Well, that's what I'm asking
The
for.
main motion.
All right. All right, let's take a vote then. If there's no further discussion on the amendment, we'll vote on the amendment.
No, I have just a question on the amendment.
Well, I just asked you that.
Well, you asked me
But
about...
it's your question.
No, you didn't. You asked me about the...
What's your question, Mr. Mudge?
You're sure and all you got.
Bottom line is, John, you struck something up here that's kind of interesting because, it seems to me you could buy three small pickup trucks like this and let the town, give one even to the town, let them buy the big horse for what they need it for, and we got a couple of ponies to come around to do the job. So if the town's so heavily relying on us, well, let them get the big horse and let us have some, smaller vehicles to run around with, and maybe that might even, be more cost-effective for us. So I think it should be studied a little bit myself, especially in the consolidation.
I think we have studied this issue a lot over 6 months, and the town is not purchasing because they have their own trucks. This is the truck we use.
Well, why buy a
It is
Clydesdale
not,
when you don't need a Clydesdale?
So, and I doubt if you're going to find trucks that are a third of this price. So,
Can we
we
move
now
the question
have,
on the...
let's move the question. Lorraine, could you take a roll call vote
This is on the amendment, right?
William Mudge.
on the amendment?
No. Oh, wait a minute, amendment. Linda had
She had a very good amendment.
3 years.
3 years.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll vote on it.
This is to amend the motion if the problem with the 4-year lease, that we go to 3 years. That's the amendment.
Right.
How do you vote? You still vote no?
Mr. Mudge, she's asking you for your vote. I thought you
Good
said
thing to do,
yes.
but I'm going to vote against it anyway, so
Well, you just said yes.
I'm going to
All
say
right, Kimberly
no
Page.
to this.
Yes.
Nothing against... to put
Richard
it-
Welch.
Yes.
Linda Avanzato.
Yes?
Melvoy Benson.
Yes on that amendment.
John Biscarden.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
That was a
All right,
good
let's now
amendment.
vote on the main motion.
Could you read the main motion back?
It's to approve the maintenance truck purchase to Flood Board of East Greenwich for $39,323 for annual installments of $9,830.
But with the amendment, but if
With the
that
amendment.
doesn't work, then it
With the
will go to
amendment.
3.
The amendment, yeah.
Right.
With the amendment as passed.
Right.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Richard Welch.
Yes.
Linda Avanzato.
Yes?
Melvoy Benson.
Yes.
John Biscarden.
No.
William Mudge.
No.
Motion passes 4-2.
All right, thank you very much. It is now 10:05,
Oh,
and
Make a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair,
we have a motion to adjourn.
before we adjourn, I would like to
Haven't
speak
finished the
as the school
discussion on-
committee on special privilege.
No, we don't have time to do the, we have a motion to adjourn, and that takes precedence.
Okay.
Well, whether we
So
had
all
to-
those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you. We are adjourned
We didn't
for
get to talk about
February
the-
28, 2012. Thank you very much.
We did-